Thank you. We're back in session now. Welcome everybody to the North Andover School Committee meeting of November 3rd, 2016. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everybody please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. As a reminder, we're being recorded, and we're on TV tonight, so could everyone please silence their mobile devices if they may. We actually have a very busy agenda today, so I'm going to try to move as quickly as possible through all this. So the first order is public comment. Do we have someone from the public to speak on something? Nope, not at all. Okay, good.
Great.
We have, oh, we do. I'm sorry. But why don't you come on? Oh, you need to talk to the mic. I watched it one time from at home and can't hear a thing. So just for the record, just introduce yourself and give us your address and go from there. And your name.
I'm Yefim Schneiderman. My address is 106 Rocky Brook Road. I'm a senior at the North Andover High School. And my public comment was going to be about finding ways to make classes a little better at the North Andover High School, because as a senior, I've had experience going through the college applications and looking through especially the technology courses and the sort of health and physical education courses, and I was concerned that these courses were not adequate to my desires. I wanted to make sure that people were going to North Andover High School and were getting what they wanted out of our education system. And so looking around, I was looking at starting with the physical education courses, I thought that having 4 required courses was a bit too much. It prevented me personally from taking 2 AP classes, and now that I've got siblings going through the education system, I think that the physical requirements are unnecessary, granted the quality of the physical education courses that we actually have at the high school. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's totally unnecessary to be giving students something that they totally don't need and that they're wasting their time in these courses, because I could have taken so many more things that I actually wanted to take and that I benefit absolutely nothing from these physical education courses. So that was my first order, and the second was the technology. Are you 18, Nick? You vote? Almost. The second was regarding the technology department. I'm a tech assistant for Paul K. at the high school, so I get a little bit of what's going on with the technology department, and I'm aware we have a pretty decent tech department. However, the tech education is not meeting my desires. I have a lot of friends who are taking courses like Intro to Computer Programming and applications for the 21st century. And a lot of what I'm seeing is that people are learning to do really basic things like sending emails, and they're seniors. So I don't quite understand why we make this class a requirement where you learn to make a PowerPoint. And my sister is currently 7 years old, and she's starting to learn how to do that. And I think there's a huge difference between, 12 years old, where this is a skill you should have, and then 12th grade, where this is a skill you should have used a million times already. You don't need to take a class for it. Mm-hmm. So I think just to sum it up, that we've got these 2 programs, physical education and technology, that we definitely have the resources to make them a lot better. It's just we need to maybe audit these classes that people are taking at the high school in particular. I don't know how it goes at the other schools, but definitely at the high school, I wanted to say that these 2 programs are not meeting the requirements, especially to become an adequate member of a college or to apply to college. You need certain skills, and sending an email is way below the requirements. And I think we need to do better, and that we are ready to do better in the high school.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the comments. I think the timing is appropriate because we have the high school principal with us today, as well as the superintendent taking duties.
Just one comment. That there is actually a state law that requires students to take a physical education class at least once a year. Right. So I just want to let you know that that's a state law. That's not a local decision.
Okay.
Those legislators.
I just want you to be clear.
And for the record, I don't know how to do a PowerPoint presentation myself. So. I really appreciate you coming today. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we'll go to Courtney on our student report. No Cole tonight?
No, I guess not.
He sends his regrets.
I
Yeah.
saw him in the high school, didn't even recognize him.
Oh.
Lost the tie.
Maybe he was too cool to talk to you. Hey, Courtney, welcome.
Hi, I just want to start off with homecoming. It was super successful. I got the recommendation from Mrs. Holman I asked her what I should say at the school committee meeting if I missed anything, and she said definitely talk about the homecoming. Also, seniors won Spirit Week. Cole's not here, but he would definitely agree with me that we had a little battle at lunch. He was running the student council table penny wars while I was running the pre-health table, and I was trying to put pennies in my jar, and he kept covering it. It was really funny. And the deadline for early action has passed, so a lot of the stress has leveled off on the seniors. I know Eufeme and I have already applied to our main colleges. There's another football game Friday. We all thought the last one was last Friday, but this is high school. And the Software Use at NAS discussion, I saw Mrs. Holman today, and she gave me pamphlets to hand out, and students even came up to me to get it from me. They were so interested, and they want to have their input on the phone discussion using it at the high school. And there's also going to be an AP government mock election. I think it's this Friday. It's through all 3 lunches, and they're going to see who NAS would really vote for this 2016 election. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you both.
Courtney. Appreciate it. Yep, she was good. Very good. Okay, so the next item is our consent agenda. The first is review and approval of minutes that are presented in your packet. Any concerns about those or edits, or can I get a motion to accept as presented in your packet?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gross, seconded by Ms. Mabley. All those in favor say aye.
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 I
You abstained. Mr. McDevitt was not present. So that vote is 4-0. Thank you.
And I thank Ms. Zagari for adding the times. That was very nice of her.
Okay, now we have Kittredge PTO donation that's been postponed for several times, but I'm glad we could finally get it. Mr. Mealy, do you want to take this or lead this off?
Sure. During the construction of the gymnasium at Kittredge, when we finished and we were getting the inspector to okay opening up, he actually expressed concerns that we didn't have an air conditioner. We couldn't air condition it based on the budget that we had. And so while he was reluctant, he did approve it, and the PTO at Kittredge has taken it upon itself to meet that need and is donating the funds to install an air conditioner in the Kittredge gym.
Okay. Mr. Cushing, you have anything to add to that? This is actually your request, I see.
Yes, it is, and it comes through the PTO, and the PTO board, and it's just felt like the floor costs the community, the town itself, $50,000, as well as because of architectural fees, as well as the underlayment of the floor and the wood floor itself, cost upwards of $100,000. And I think that was a major concern about the preservation of the floor. I even know that we've had such wearing on the floor that this year, after 3 years of use, we ended up resanding and restaining the floor. So it's really mainly to make sure that that the place itself is maintained. And like Jim has mentioned, the building inspector, Jerry Brown, the building inspector at the time, Jerry
Yes.
Brown, before he signed the occupation permit, did really register, and I think it is actually on the occupation permit, that he was concerned because of the lack of ventilation in the gym.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mealy or Mr. Cushing?
Number one, I think it's fantastic that, again, the Kittredge PTO stands up and does above and beyond. I just got to voice concern that this, in my mind, is not an academic donation, and it troubles me that our enrichment programs are being utilized for facilities, where I just wonder if there's another way we could have found the $32,000 to provide ventilation and taken the money that the enrichment program has provided and do something that might improve academics.
I would agree with Mr. Gross. I think it's amazing that this kind of money has been raised. I think it's unfortunate that it's spent on a maintenance issue and not on helping to support expanded programs for the kids.
Just a way of background, I was approached, I think it was at least 3 or 4 years ago, to help raise money for this, for the Kittredge gym floor. I think there was a shortage, at least a perceived shortage at the time of how we're gonna pay for this, to be appropriate enough money at town meeting for it. My understanding is this is leftover money from that fundraising effort, that this was a specific fundraising effort for that gymnasium floor. And I know we raised a lot of money for it, and I think, because I felt the same way, like, that's a capital project. But with that being said, I think the intent of these donations was to go to the gymnasium.
When the money was raised, that was the intent.
When the money was
That was
raised.
totally the intent.
Total the intent. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but this, was decided that they needed to spend this, quite some time ago. So, again, if this is just regular PTO money with their spaghetti suppers and whatnot, primo pasta night in a couple weeks, by the way. I gotta get that form back into, that's right. You have to speak to it, that's right, I do. But with that being said, I think the donors who stepped up a lot, knew was going to the gymnasium.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I think at the time there wasn't the thought that the floor was going to get funding from the town
Right.
for that, and so the parents got involved to do the fundraising, and when the town kind of came through with that, the need was pretty apparent. And if you've ever been there on a hot June day, you do not want to see the kids leaving, or smell the kids leaving, I should say. It really needs it, and it's a great facility. It gets a ton of use. But this was just leftover money that was for that. It was completely separate fundraising from anything to do with the regular.
Specifically for the
PTO.
gym, I remember that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
And I will attest that the kindergarten orientation back in August was pretty grim. Anyways, so could I have a motion to accept this donation?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. McDevitt makes a motion to, second by Mr. Limpet. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. 5-0 vote as well.
Again,
Thank you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That
Madam.
helps.
Appreciate it.
Ask Mr. Cushing.
Sure.
So there's a rumor on the street, Mr. Cushing, that there's been crates or something packed in Germany, and there'll be another donation coming from Kittredge for the playground center.
Yo.
So it's actually en route, is that the rumor?
It is
en
en
route.
route, and we certainly hope by the end of next week that the entire playground is here. And Peter Breen is actually going to do the excavation for free for us, which is really terrific. And he's actually holding off until it lands here so that we don't have any issues with children jumping into a 18-inch pit.
Perfect. We'll look forward to having you come back.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Quick chairs report. Just want to say thank you to Dr. Price and I think Carrie Wahlberg. I know some people who were involved with the educator, the Hall of Fame educator we did last week for Kevin McCarthy and the professional teacher status. We had several. I thought it was a really well-attended and really well-run event, and I think that's just a good way of doing it going forward, recognizing. I thought Kevin McCarthy's comments to the newer teachers
Fabulous.
were spot on, and I think self-deprecating as well as, I think, insightful.
And thanks to the Stevens Memorial Library
Yeah,
for
the library
hosting.
too, that's right. Thank
Fabulous
you.
place.
Thank you. Just another reminder for members of the board, on the 17th, we're going to start at 7:30 so we can all go to the public records training at the middle school. I think I sent you an email on that. And just a reminder, you need the RSVP to KP Law, not to Lori. The last thing on the chair's report, the Board of Selectmen took up on their meeting on Tuesday night, because we had Halloween on Monday night, on actual Halloween. The proposal to renovate, rehabilitate, I should say, the Hayes Field and the fields behind the middle school. I had a couple conversations with Chairman Valancourt prior to that meeting, and I'm happy that Vice Chair Limpert and Member Mably were able to attend that meeting. They have done some preliminary work on that project. I know we have some concerns because of the EEC being next door and what our plans are for the EEC. So Chairman Valancourt agreed to let us appoint a school committee member to that in a non-voting capacity. I think there's 5 members they appointed. So I want to put that on the table. It's something to discuss tonight. I know we all would love to participate in that. I had a additional conversation with Mr. Mailer about it, and he's more than willing to allow other members to attend because, like I said, they're non-voting members anyway. So I think it's going to be important to get the public involved with this because it does abut some very densely populated areas of town, and that field has been used in a great degree for quite some time, so it might be a shock. I mean, growing up in this town, those fields were used all the time. Those lights were on all the time. It may be different now. So I'll open up for discussion on this.
I think the one thing, Mr. Teresi, that came out of the presentation to me was the fact that our superintendent has expressed some concern about our middle school and its overcrowding, and so the fact that the footprint of the new fields, as proposed in a couple of drawings that they gave at that meeting, really have the same perimeter that they have today. So there's not any additional space that's going to be available, real estate, if we want to expand the middle school, if that's part of the process. So unfortunately, that project is a little bit out ahead of us in trying to think about what we need to do at the middle school, and I have some concern about what that may do to compromise our ability to expand the middle school if that's what we feel is going to be necessary later. So I think that just needs to be something considered while we're going through that, while someone's going through that project and thinking about some alternatives, just to let them know that, you know, that's an issue for us that we're going to have to deal with at some point. So.
Anyone else? Mr. Devitt?
I was going to comment. I mean, if we're looking at revitalization of the fields and whatnot, I think we should take a look at where we're falling short, either with the high school field overuse or not able to accommodate the venues that are desirable there. And if that plays into the conversation, there are things that, if we had to do Walsh Stadium again, we might do differently in terms of the cost and aggravation of moving stands, as an example. And maybe we can be a little more thoughtful about how do we house 4,000 people that might be coming for an event in town. Is this an opportunity to solve that problem as well?
Interesting.
I was just going to ask Dr. Price, the study that we're doing on the schools and the physical structures, is that still on target for early December?
So it's it's part of my superintendent's report.
Okay.
So is that okay if I move in there? Right?
I can hold.
You can hold. So, the first thing on the superintendent's report was on Tuesday. Chairman Teresi and Vice Chair Limpert and I are meeting with KB&A for the preliminary. If you remember, they're the subcommittee, and they are on target to come here on December 1st. It's the first time any of us have seen anything, so I haven't seen a thing yet, so I can't talk about what they're going to recommend, but that's the process to work with the subcommittee. And I would say that I think Stan's comments here about the middle school, we need to kind of start really thinking about the middle school and what is even kind of possible, what are the issues. So I think if we can, as we move forward with the elementary, and I've been pretty clear with Mr. Mailer, it would be very helpful for us to start getting even a back of the envelope understanding of what we might need at the middle school. So the thought is to move on that very soon. So we especially, I think the Hayes Stadium component has pushed us a little, which is great. So I think our first priority is to get a recommendation out of this board on what we think makes sense for the elementary classroom size issue, and then the next priority is to get moving on what makes sense for our middle school.
Also, in relation to the presentation that Mr. Limpert and I saw, there are things like I've known from participating at the middle school that there's been a need for some recess type of options for the middle school. I know that sounds kind of funny, but there has been a need for recreation, and there's an opportunity in this renovation to accommodate that. It's not been thought of yet from what we saw, but again, the plans that they showed are very, very rough. But it would be important to be able to weigh in on thoughts like that, and again, how that relates to what goes on at Atkinson, at the ECC. Where they lay things out so that it's multi-use. It's meant to be multi-generational, which is exciting, but we need to make sure that we're not, gym takes place out there, PE is out there. We have to make sure we don't have to go twice as far to do your, lacrosse.
The consultant who had done the preliminary work was very clear about this being really almost like a menu you could pick from, and they had just taken some of the possible options and arranged them in some fashion, but they said, just tell us what you think you want and where you want it, and we'll just keep doing this until you're satisfied. So they weren't locked into any of the two options they showed, and they were very clear that here's some of the things you could do others, or not these, more of these, so they were very flexible, and my understanding is that they're very responsive consulting operation, so, it seemed like when you ask a question, they'll respond to it, so that's good.
And the committee they put in place are the ones who are meant to then get the input from the community to go forward and actually make a plan that they present. And they're the ones who did McAvoy, it's the same.
My feeling is this conversation illustrates the need for a member of the school committee to be part of that process, and the school community to be part of that process. So I think the idea that there's going to be a non-voting school committee member is really important, because it would make no sense to have that happen without the schools working in accordance.
And the selectman appointed Ms. Smedili as a non-voting member as well for them, and she's a neighbor, and that's why she was interested.
So I know, Andrew and Amy have kids in sports around town right now, and my kids are starting. I know they're starting. And I know fields have been a big issue in this town going back 20 years. We've had lawsuits over it. That being said, I think the point that Mr. Limpert started the conversation with is spot on. That we need to make sure that our bases are covered, and it's important to have a representative there for this committee. I think the committee they put together, I know three of them very well. I have that much respect for them, and they're going to do what's best for this town. I have no doubt. But it's our job as a school committee to make sure that we are taking care of the long-term needs of our students. So I know Ms. Mabley and Mr. Limp both attended the meeting. I don't know if one of you had a preference, or if you both wanted to attend these meetings. I don't know. I think, is Terry Holland the chair of this? They haven't picked a chair yet, but I think, yeah. Do you have any?
That would be fine, and I could just attend.
Pop in. As you're known to do.
Like I often do, right?
All right. So I'll accept the motion to appoint Ms. Mabley to this as a non-voting member of this. I don't know what the committee's going to call the Fields Committee. Moved by Mr. Seconded by Mr. McDevitt. All those all those in favor say aye. Aye. So, great. So Ms. Mabley is on that. So that was an extended chairs report that led into something else, but I appreciate your patience on that. Now, Madam Superintendent, you can.
Yes, already done some. Brian, last time you had asked about the privacy and security of our school network infrastructure. I wanted to let you know that we have looked at that very preliminary, and the vast majority of our network is actually not housed internally. It's web-based. So what we've decided to do is an internal audit working with the town, because the vast majority of what is held is actually outside of our physical structure. So we will get back to you. I just wanted to let you know that that's part of what we're doing.
Yeah, the recommendation was have an external audit of a professional organization that does that type
So
of thing.
the feeling on the schools in the town was that because so much of our platforms are web-based, that it made sense to do it internally. So we'll do that. If it doesn't meet the requirements, then we'll come back and do it again.
Thank you.
And then just two quick things. One, our last group of 8th graders is up at Nature's Classroom. Mr. Mealy got to chaperone along with Dr. McQuaid, Dr. McQuaid too. They just returned yesterday, and I'm really glad that today is the day. So they got some sleep last night before they had this meeting. But from all accounts, it's been a really wonderful success. And I just want to thank Dr. McQuaid. It has been an incredible labor of love, and the amount of time that it has taken to open this opportunity for our middle school students. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I would like to also thank the NAMS teachers, because it was definitely a all-school effort, and without them, we couldn't have done it, so that was really nice.
It's exciting to have our entire grade of kids go and have an experience. Not everyone, but at least the vast majority. So, and then the last thing is, the last time I will speak about this, the Live Your Learning Education Fund dinner is hit capacity, but not really. There's 7 seats left. So if anyone's out there and still wants to go, we have convinced the chef to go up to 60 people rather than 50. It was a lot of effort, but it worked. And so there are 7 seats left. So if anyone's still interested, go now and buy your tickets. It'll be a lot of fun.
All right. That is Saturday night. Right?
Saturday night, 6:30 at Brightview.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, old business, second reading, approval of 4 additional behavior technician positions. We discussed this pretty in depth last, 2 weeks ago. I know Mr. McDevitt, you were not present. If you had any specific questions about this, we were fortunate enough to have Sarah Clifford and Donna Straight give us a really in-depth presentation on it. But, or anyone else have any further questions on this?
Another question I have is this going to be enough?
For now, I mean, we believe, I mean, I'll ask you, Dr. Straight, to answer that.
Well, again, working with students is very variable and fluid activity. We don't know who's going to move in or what types of things may occur that may require some additional, but for the moment, you can see this is a
Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request for 4 additional behavior technician positions. Moved by Mr. McGross, seconded by Ms. Mabley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. It's another 5-0 vote. You're going to abstain? I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. So it's a 4-0 vote, Mr. McDevitt abstaining, okay? So thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go on to the meat of the meeting, which is the MCAS presentation. We've been joined by principals of our school system here. And I guess I would just say, when it's your turn to speak, make sure there's a microphone in front of you. And for the people at home, just introduce yourselves again, because I'm sure we know you, but I'm sure a lot of people, the 6 or 7 people watching at home, may not know who you are. So
I do want to say that Mr. Landry has had a family emergency and is not here tonight, completely unavoidable, and we told him to be with his father. So if you all would keep him in his thoughts, in your thoughts, that would be really helpful. Greg really wanted to be here, but we told him to be with his family.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that.
The only question I have is, do you want us to do the field trips first, Ms. Holman? Is that, do you mind? I know that you have to leave, so I'm wondering if we could just quickly look at the field trips first, if that would be all right with you, Chairman Teresi?
So we're going to jump over to the first reading of the overnight trips, the DECA state and national competitions, exchange trip to Quebec City, Canada, and music trip to Atlantic City, New Jersey. That's first.
So, Deb, would you like to present them, or just quickly what they are, or if that's possible? And this is just the first reading, so we don't have to agree to anything, really.
Great, absolutely. I'm Deborah Holman, interim principal at North Andover High School, and I'll start with the DECA trips. Those are annual trips that the business teachers take our students on. One is the national competition, and that one is in Anaheim, and then the district competition is at Boston Copley. I think I'm looking at my,
Yep.
Okay. And this is a great organization. I was excited when I got to North Andover High School because we have a real tradition of going to these. The school I was coming from was just starting to get into DECA. They're popular, as you can tell by the number of students who qualify and attend. And this weekend, I believe it's this weekend, even tonight, there's something going on with DECA. There's a Shark Tank, actually, going on elsewhere in town. And in one of the applications at the end, you'll see that there's an ask for school committee members who want to join the districts and do judging for the different high schools, so please let us know if you want to do that. These are strong organizations and a strong history of DECA participation at the high school. The next domestic one is the Scarlet and Black Singers, a group from our super choral program, and teacher Sarah Durkin. Our Scarlet and Black Singers were invited to perform at the National All-Eastern Conference, and they're the only high school who got this invitation, and they are, as Sarah writes in the application, they're going to perform as the High Achieving Model High School Choir. So this is a huge honor. It's in New Jersey in April. It's an overnight trip, and the students with Sarah will be able to participate in different workshops and learn, as Sarah says, what it's like to be a music teacher. But it's just great exposure for the kids. And then the last one is an international trip. French teacher Chris Carroll has really gone above and beyond since the minute I was on the job in July, actually, trying to figure out our French language trip. Initially, she had a trip planned for France in February, and with international events, interest was moving away from that trip. Chris she wouldn't allow to not have a trip, and so she said, what can we do more in our region? And so she organized a trip to Quebec. The great thing about this trip it is using the company that has organized and managed our Spanish exchange, so there was some familiarity and comfort with that. So it's a great-looking week in Quebec. You can read, including snowshoeing and things like that. So,
And this really was in reaction to making the French trip, just the interest was waning, given, so.
yeah.
This is in exchange for the French trip. We're not doing both.
Exactly.
Just-
Exactly.
We approved the
Thanks.
French trip last spring.
Right. Actually, there's a question, can I ask a question real quick?
You certainly can ask a question.
So I know we currently have German and French exchange students here, or unless they just left, but they've been here.
French students are here, German students have left,
I
yes.
saw French students on Halloween trick-or-treating.
Yep.
So are we going to then exchange with Quebec as well, or we're just sticking with France coming in, us going to Quebec?
Quebec, my understanding is that Quebec is, we are going there, there's a homestay.
Right.
And since it was a quick shift, that there's not an exchange component of it at this
That
point.
makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Would this be something we would continue doing in the future if this was successful?
It might be. It might be, although we like our sibling French school, and those relationships are important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're at the, let's get through this year, assess things, keep our relationships, but then make some decisions.
Okay.
So,
It does make some flexibility, though, if you can't afford or don't want your kid going to Europe, but you're wanting them to.
we might find that this is the
to go,
preferred,
right?
actually,
Who
yeah.
knows? It's very,
Yeah.
it's great, it's beautifully laid out.
Yeah, good.
And for students who can't afford, that's why we have the Liberty
That's right.
Education.
Yes.
I teed that up for you.
Well
Dinner
done.
Saturday night.
Well done. 17th available. This is only first reading, but any further questions? And I would say if you have any questions that arise in the next couple of weeks,
I actually do have one more, small.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'll be fast. Scarlet Black Singer is totally awesome and cool thing. Does that cause any problems for those same students to then go to LA? Because I think that's the same crowd, right?
That's a great question.
I don't have all those dates committed to memory.
I don't
but
think it
let me-
overlaps by time, but in terms of monetary
Missing, yeah.
and missing school, et cetera,
Yeah.
does that cause any
Let me have that conversation
familial stress to
with
parents saying
Sarah
yes
Durkin,
twice?
yeah.
Or academic stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Academic stress would be a bigger concern. I mean,
Right.
between the-
Right.
The Music Association and.
It looks like they're trying to raise the money themselves, is what it says. But it's whether or not you're missing, I think this was only 2 days of school, though. I don't remember how many
Right.
LA was.
We'll get back to you.
we can circle back to Ms.
Yeah.
Durkin and
Thank you.
fix that
That's good.
before we vote on this next time. Okay?
Thank you.
We're
Okay.
good?
Thank you
All
for
right.
doing that.
Happy to.
So we're going to do our MCAS presentation, and I just want to say to people at home, and then also to all of you,
We have a lot of district slides. I'm not going through all of them, but I really think it's important that we're very transparent about our scores and how we did. So if people are interested, it's all here, but I'm just going to highlight a few things and set the stage and then really turn it over to the amazing educational leaders that are sitting over there to talk about their schools, okay? So my first kind of point is actually on the second slide, and you're going to see something there where if you look in the ELA, you're going to see a pretty significant dip in third grade. The challenge is, and this is really what I want to make a point here, is because fewer than 30% of the school districts took MCAS, there's no state average. So we don't know if the third grade dip is a North Andover phenomenon or is it a state phenomenon. Did the test just get harder? Did they try to put in more challenging questions? So the challenge for this year really is it's hard to interpret a lot of things. The things that we can interpret with some feeling of strength is the high school, because all students in Massachusetts took the high school MCAS and the science MCAS, but up from K to 8, from 3 to 8 in ELA and math, it's very challenging to interpret. And especially if we see the entire district move in something. If one school moves in one direction, then that's something to look at. But if the entire district moves in one direction, it's hard to know, especially because we don't have the state averages. So we saw a dip in third grade. It's hard for us to really understand what that means. Similarly, if you look in fifth grade math, which is on the fourth slide, if you keep going down the fifth grade math, you'll see a dip in fifth grade math. But if you keep going, and that's Mr. Mealy onto the 8th slide, you'll see that our growth percentiles in fifth grade math for this year, the next one down, the fifth grade math growth percentiles were actually higher. We changed that. Okay. No, keep going. Go to the next one. I guess it didn't get changed on the PDF here. If you look at the fifth grade math scores, you'll see our growth was actually higher this year than last year. So wait, there's a dip in our averages. We don't know what the state average is, but we have an increase in our SGP for math. So I'm just using this as an example to say it's really tricky to interpret MCAS scores this year. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
With all those people down in Malden, they can't figure out the 30% that took the test? Like,
They did not do that this year. They did do it, and that's where I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gilligan. If you go back up one slide, Mr. Mealy. They did do it in trying to rank all of the schools in the state.
Yeah.
But that was like a little bit of creative mathematics, in my humble opinion. So,
So
Mr.
if I could
Gilligan.
draw your attention to this slide. This is how every school did versus every other elementary, middle, and high school in the state of Massachusetts. So over 351 cities and towns and all the schools available. As you can look, we have the percentile rank between 1 and 99% over time from 2012 to 2016. I'd echo Dr. Price's sentiments around, so 28% of the state took MCAS this year. Everyone else who took the PARCC exam was held harmless, meaning that there was no accountability, and that's some may speculate there's a lot of reason why people chose to take the PARCC. That being said, they used some type of bridge tool in addition to the 28% of the MCAS to come up with the state percentile rank. So. Yeah, so this is like the Atkinson School versus every other elementary school in the state. And as you can see in 2012, they started at 36 percentile, 56 in 15, and they've dipped down to 49 now. The Franklin was in the 89 percentile, and they're in the 86. The Kittredge went up from 87 to 89 percentile rank. The Sargent School made a significant jump from 71% percentile rank to 76. Thompson was up from 59 to 60. Middle school was up from 79 to 81, and the high school was 73 to 68. So that gives you a little bit of a sense. In years past, I had much more confidence in looking at this because we've had the neat thing up until this 16 is we've had, if you look at every single year, every school has improved. And it's great to see these other schools improve. It's just a little more tricky to know what this means because of, in grades 3 to 8, what they did this year is they rearranged the test they eliminated the long comp in 4 and 7. They added PARCC-like questions. So, I think there's some really positive things here, and I think there's also some things that we need to work on, and we'll continue that throughout the slides.
To the point that Dr. Price made earlier, though, we do see our elementary schools moving in different directions. I mean,
Yes,
some
we
up and
do.
some down, so it's not like there's a test trend obvious from this chart.
Yeah, no, I think those are probably unique maybe to the schools even.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
all I would say.
And then the only other point that I want to make looking at these is if you move to the percentage advanced and proficient by key subgroups, so that's a whole bunch of charts that look the same. You will see that if you look at our key subgroups, students with disabilities, low-income students, African American students, and Hispanic students, you will see that in general we are performing above the state average. You should just keep going. Yep. You'll see that the line, and that's the lines, keep going, it's quite far down. You'll see that the lines that are going across here, just this is an example, you'll see that the lines that are going across here are the state averages. You can see that in general, this slide does not demonstrate it, we are performing above the state average of those subgroups. The place that we see the most that our line is below the state average is our students with disabilities. So, so just to say, in general, our African American students our Hispanic students, African Americans not a large enough group, but our Hispanic students are scoring at or above the state average of Hispanic students in the state. All students are scoring at or above all students in the state. Our low-income students at or above all students in the state. And many times, our students on IEPs are scoring about the same average, and in some cases, they're scoring below, and that's of concern to us.
So one thing, if interject a little bit with regard to our All Students Initiative. What we're doing is, having looked at some of this data and considering where our students with disabilities are, we're taking a look at the types of things that we can incorporate within our classrooms, whether it be looking at co-teaching models, including special educators into the same types of professional development that the general education teachers are having, really analyzing our programs and how to insert those students into the general ed classrooms to get general curriculum and improve those scores. So we're really analyzing that and looking at ways that we can continue to move forward and improve that.
So the key takeaways, thank you, Dr. Straight, are, if you keep going, Mr. Mealy, overall, we continue to score at or above the state average, and I expect nothing less in North Andover. We should be scoring at and above the state average for all students. It's very difficult to interpret the MCAS results. I think I made that point. I don't need to drag that in anymore. And then we had some really targeted areas of growth, many areas that the principals, when they were here last year, focused on as concerns in their school, and I'm really excited to hear them talk about those. Some other key district takeaways is our students on IEPs continue to perform below the state average in many grades and are consistently our lowest performing subgroup. That's normal to have your students on IEPs be your lowest performing subgroup. At least that's consistent across districts. I think normal is an inappropriate word to use there. But you know, there are some places where we're performing below the state average, which is not within line with what we expect. And then the other thing that we've noticed is we've really dug into this data at levels that we're not necessarily sharing tonight. We've really noticed that our high functional teacher teams are having incredible success. So whether that be a department team, whether that be a grade level team at a specific school, the principals have really been able to, we've gotten into some level of detail that has demonstrated to us that our highly functional teams are having incredible success, and that we really need to make sure we're continuing to focus on supporting our teacher teams. And then our key district actions. Our first is something you all have heard a lot about, the implementation of the Lucy Calkins writing program and foundations, which is really around ELA. Dr. Straight talked a little bit, if there's any more you want to talk about in terms of all students section of our strategic plan. You know, it really is around supporting all of our students with a specific focus on social emotional learning.
Absolutely. Including really looking at ways of improving the communication and collaboration of all teachers and professionals within the buildings too, as Dr. Price pointed out, that the strong teams are meeting with success. So how do we ensure that we're incorporating all of the professionals within there, whether it's speech and language pathologists, our special educators, occupational therapists, to improve those pieces of collaboration as well, because ultimately it will improve the outcomes of our kids.
All of our kids.
All of our kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we know. Continued focus on supporting our teacher teams and teacher collaboration, as we're seeing a tie between teams that are functioning at a high level and achievement. And then the last is, we talk about the PD.
Yeah, the professional development, particularly in pedagogy and the craft. I think that we have a wonderful foundation of collaboration, and as we continue to collaborate with general education, special education, bringing all team members to the table, I think the next step that's logical for us, since we do have some pretty highly collaborative teams, is to really focus on the craft. And an example that's really kicked off very well this past month is Research for Better Teaching, is doing the Skillful Teacher with our newer teachers in years anywhere from probably 1 to 4, and we have 25 participating in that at this time. So I'd say that's our next step.
Mr. Mealy, I think it would be better for you to go to the MCAS presentation, because I know that we made some changes to the North Andover High School, especially today, your slides. So if you...
it's in Drive.
It's in Drive.
And
so
it's
if you do MCAS presentation 2016.
While he's doing that, may I ask
Yes, of course.
sort of an introductory question? This is the point at which I always feel like I need a little remedial education from you about CPI, SGP, you know.
LMNOPQR.
Exactly. And I guess my one question is, a lot of the presentations deal with student growth profiles, or whatever they are.
Student growth percentages.
Percentages. Versus the CPI. Mm-hmm. And I guess one question might be, why is that? And why don't we have both and look at both in these presentations?
So that's a great question. So let me just give a quick primer on this. Is student growth percentiles basically takes
kids and compares them to kids who scored similarly to them in previous years. So if you kind of take all the kids in who take it in third grade, that's why you never get them in third grade, and you put them into buckets, and then you compare them to the kids who are in a similar bucket to them and how they grow. And that's really useful because it's what's the impact of that year of school, that 2 years of school. That's a really important part of growth. CPI, simply put, basically takes student growth percentiles and then percentage advanced proficient and puts them together in a very challenging formula to understand. So I think the reason that we don't use CPI, and I know you'd used it more prior to my arrival, is that it's really, really, really complicated to understand. Like, we can't explain what it means. It kind of feels like you put all this stuff in a sausage grinder and you go like this and it comes out the other end. And so when we really are looking at how to target interventions and what we need to do for individual kids, a CPI is something that is an aggregate of a school, but it doesn't help us think about what are the individual aspects of what those kids need. And so as we are looking at, as I've talked about, this goal of like being a level 1 district, which just feels like right up here, it's an example of SGP is down to the kid. We have a SGP for each kid. We don't have a CPI for each kid. Does that make any sense? It's an aggregate. And so when we're looking at this and targeting individual students and individual grades and individual classrooms, SGP comes a much better way for us to get to that level, which is where, if we're going to make a difference for kids, we have to be at. Does that make sense?
It does. Let me just, one more comment, though. The growth, I understand, and I get the focus on that. But I guess I'm still wondering, it's the growth from what to what? I mean, it's like if you were at a lower grade, if I'm thinking of it in terms of academic grades, and I was way down somewhere, and then I grew, but I'm still not, not up where I'd like to be.
So that's why we look, but that's why we look at advanced and proficient similarly. So that's why when we looked at like the 5th grade, advanced and proficient was down, but the growth was up. Well, what does that tell us? So we don't just look at growth, we look at advanced and proficient, which again, we can get for individual kids.
Okay. Good answer.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's
okay.
So as we get rolling here, just so we can keep a kind of orderly presentation going on, are you going to have every school principal talk about?
Yes.
All right. So why don't we hold questions till that person's done speaking, and then ask questions
at the end of each school.
At the end of each school.
Okay.
Right, at the end of each school.
Sounds great.
Okay?
Sounds
all right.
perfect.
We're going to start at the top, 12th backwards. Start at the high school and go backwards.
So 12 to K.
12 to K, not K to 12.
Okay, great. Thank you to my elementary and middle school colleagues.
Well, you could leave early if you do well, right?
Exactly. And on that note, I would say that overall ELA
Math and science for the high school scores, especially achievement performance scores, are strong, as they clearly have been for many years at North Andover High School. And yet there are some really meaty challenges and some juicy problems that faculty and I want to dive into. So ELA is coming up, and I think you have, yep, thanks, Jim. So as you can see, 2012 through 2016, for ELA English, high, in the 90s for proficient and higher achievement scores at or above the state average. And for SGP, what Stan was just talking about, this is where we would want them, in the 40 to 60 range. The thing you note for the 2016 scores in ELA is that there's a drop in SGP, which made us scratch our heads and wonder, well, where did that come from? 1 year doesn't make a trend, but this suggested some information to look into. In particular, we went into our subgroups, and for ELA looked at high needs students and students with disabilities. So high needs includes students with disabilities, ELL, or low income. And on the left there, if you see high needs for 2016, the SGP has dropped significantly. Proficient or higher has dropped for high needs also. Over on the right, students with disabilities, we've got proficient or higher. The achievement performance scores have dropped a bit, and the SGP is significantly low. So now we're looking, digging in a more granular level at that data and looking at the students who were at the needs improvement and failing level. Who were the kids? Not because we want to know, the kids necessarily, but where were they? Were they in a less supported pull-out class that didn't get the support that it needed? Were they in a class where there was a rocky transition to a long-term sub who didn't get the support? What's the answer to why this happened? I wasn't there last year, but there are people there with eyes on that. So that's sort of the meaty challenge that we're looking at. In English, I'll make some comments on the plan for English at the last few slides. So the next slide is math. And scoring proficient or higher, consistent in the 80s. This is a good percentage, 86%, above the state average. The SGP was the big celebration this year in the math department. The growth, with all the focus and the work that they did last year that they talked to me about a lot, and they're very proud of that. And we had big celebrations around that growth in SGP for the 10th grade math.
It's a big deal.
It's a very big deal, yeah.
Particularly the change, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And now it's maintaining that change, right? And they did some really good, they have been working on and they're doing some really good stuff in their classroom teaching and assessment, learning about and shifting to performance assessments in the class, which is a deeper way at looking at and assessing our kids really learning what we think they're learning in math in addition to a traditional exam. So that is successful. When we go to the next slide and we dig into the subgroups that we're particularly looking at, there's the story deepens. So on the left there, high needs, we've got 51% of the students, a bit of a drop from last year, proficient or higher. And then the SGP is hovering down in the high 30s. So we know that we have some work with high needs students, and then if we pull out students with disabilities on the right in math, 35% only proficient or higher. And then the SGP also hovering a little below, certainly below where we want it. So that's causing some discussion about targeting supports for students with disabilities. In particular.
We changed that. We changed that. That's why this is a change.
Are you cheating on the question thing?
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that in your packet, this is the slightly different slide, so that's why we, okay?
Okay. This is the.
Yep, that's the reason for the change.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, and then if we look at science, ELA and math, you remember, are done in the 10th grade. Science, we test the kids in 9th grade, and all the 9th graders take biology. So here, we're consistently high in performance level, 91% proficient or higher for 2016, well above the state average of 73%, pretty consistent for the years listed here. There's not SGP, the state does not calculate student growth percentile for science, so we don't have that. When we do the same thing we did with English and math, and we look on the next slide at high needs and students with disabilities, it's some really good results. There are some horizons to move into, but proficient or higher consistently in the 50s and 60s, and 65% is good. Students with disabilities, pretty consistent after that jump in 2014, proficient or higher, 52%. So still some work to do in science that they're looking at, but those are overall strong scores. So next, for the high school areas of strength and improvement, you've just seen that, a student growth percentile increase in math. Again, a direct focus of the work they've done, consistent high levels in science in ELA, and comparative high levels of achievement for high needs and students with disabilities in science, which is a good. Areas of concern, you saw them, the ELA achievement in terms of SGP, especially for high needs students, and math achievement for high needs students also, particular kids on IEPs. And so the plan for the high school, this year at the beginning of the year, leadership team at the high school and then the whole faculty and I, we set an area of focus, a school-wide area of focus, which I don't have up there, but I'll mention this on the side. School-wide school-wide area of focus that's in alignment with the strategic plan, which is a focus on ensuring all students have access to an excellent education, and all the high school teachers committed to that. We're doing a number of things generally as a faculty. For example, on election day, we have a full day of professional development. There's about a 90-minute segment that we're starting the morning out with all faculty together, and we're reading a section of Tom Hare's Effective Inclusive Schools to read about the Boston Arts Academy, actually, which we will never be the Boston Arts Academy, but it paints a really wonderful picture of Boston Arts Academy as a model of an inclusive school and how they have done it and what their history is. So the assignment to the faculty is read this, read about Boston Arts Academy, and then what sort of nuggets or applicable things could help our thinking and our mental paradigms at North Andover High School in terms of shifting to teach all students well and better. So that'll be great. Things that are listed up here, the English language arts, the English department, with the math department also, and social studies and science are doing co-taught classes. English has a department-wide, they have department-wide common assessments that they are continually refining. They are refining their writing rubrics for consistent teaching and assessment across teachers in a particular grade, and I've been in on some of their tuning of their rubrics, which is an ongoing, perennial thing that you do as a teacher in humanities. Math, also co-taught classes. So again, the students who were pulled out into sub-separate classes last year are now included in general education co-taught classes with a certified math teacher and a certified experienced special educator. And so in terms of teacher teams that Donna Straight was referring to, we're focusing on supporting those teacher teams also so that they become really good and effective at collaborating and providing kids what they need. For science, the science department curriculum coordinator reports that the 9th grade biology curriculum is being streamlined even more in terms of refining common assessments across all teachers, and the bio teacher team has worked with special educators on lesson differentiation and modifications so that all kids can access it at a high level. And I think in science, they balance, like all three of our MCAS departments, science in particular, though I always feel like balances not teaching to the test, but preparing 9th graders for the test, but also getting them really excited about science, just generally, and not having the test preparation in any way eclipse the excitement about science. That's what I see in high school science departments generally, and I see that being done well in the North Andover High School biology team. So that's what I got.
I'm sticking to it, right?
Let's start on this side of the table if we want. If any questions on the side?
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, a general comment. I know when we made a decision to stick with MCAS as opposed to PARC, we did it because we thought that getting the data was going to be important so we could have these postmortems and figure out, you know, the whys. So I'm encouraged to hear that that is ongoing. I hope that we can hear about some of the outcome of the whys, because I know a few years ago we de-leveled our ninth grade English as a decision. I think that was a few years back. I'm looking at Mr. Limpert as our legend historian, right? And there were some concerns that by doing that we would be compressing our dynamics in that area. So I would like to see, and I'd like to hear about the outcomes of that. And I mean, the science improvement is very noteworthy, and I'm glad to see that. But as we focus on our special education, I would reflect on what we heard earlier this evening, as one of our seniors reinforced to us that our curriculum may not be meeting the other end of the spectrum of achievement. So I like the concept. We have very highly functional teams. In business, we try to clone those as much as possible, and I see that that's ongoing. But I would also want to make sure that we keep our eye on both sides of that challenge so we don't lose the potential of other students in the district. Thank you.
So I just really want to highlight, the math that's here, and I'm sure other people will speak to other aspects. But last year, when Dr. Scazzarella came, I mean, there was a lot of focus on the math improvement and really working, all the way down to really the 8th grade level to kind of understand exactly what needed to be taught so that the students went up to ninth grade, and they were ready and they were prepared. And so there was a tremendous amount of collaboration that department did. And so they're not here tonight, but if you can pass along, as you celebrate these results, that this is really the result of their hard work and their efforts continuing forward. So very thankful for that. The other parts, I'm sure other people are going to have some other comments, but I really think that we are doing spectacular in the science and the math and all of that effort going forward. So thank you, and thank you to the team. And I'm sure that as we kind of level this data a little bit, it'll, I don't know, it's tough to figure it all out with the only 30% or so. But.
Yeah. I will say, when you guys did vote, when we took this to the board at the time, 62 or 63% were sticking with MCAS, and then the state came out with the held harmless, and it just.
But I do want to remind you that the high school
is the same.
So
This is data we can trust. We get less trustworthy as we go down the line. Not you guys. Mr. Cushing looked at me a little scared.
A quick question on the ELA numbers. So what they're assessed on at this point is strictly multiple choice. There's no longer any essay, or is there a short answer?
No, there is a long composition.
There is,
yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, a whole day of long composition where they write a draft, then they rewrite.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
So to say, if it's not assessing that would be a good concern.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just one real quick. So to echo Mr. McDevitt's comments, the excellent performance by the math team, is that transferable? I mean, is that easily transferable, sort of the teaching component of that, the educator component to ELA or whatever? I mean,
it's a complicated answer. Yes, and it's a human organization with human teams.
Yeah,
the English team is wonderful also.
Yeah.
But yes, in many ways, the math came together and saw a real urgency, and bound together and got some resources, I've understood, from the district and from the high school to get some smart professional development last year. And when I came in July, they were working in the summer with a couple great math expert consultants and really excited about it. And they've continued that work with their administrator, Chet Jackson. He's the assistant principal over the math and science and business departments. So ELA now sees an urgency, and that's my department. I'm history and English, and so they're scratching their heads saying, all right, let's dig into the data and figure out what we need to do. And so that brings, it's a team that's already together, but that brings the team together even more. So
okay.
They're going to be asking me for resources now. So
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more thing related to that? So part of the math work team involved going down to 8th grade, right? Do you see that for ELA as being part of the solution? Like, are the kids coming in prepared enough to 9th grade in the first place?
I will ask. And being new, I don't have that piece of information, but that's great. Yes.
Just one comment is
The ELA coordinator at the high school did the whole Lucy Calkins training this
Yes,
summer.
yes.
And so I think it's really important that it's not just going down to 8th grade. It's really kind of the K to 12 perspective. And I am very confident that we are going to see increases in our ELA performance and our ability to adapt to MCAS 2.0, because we are thinking about using a very forward-looking writing program. So I do think that I think it's the 8th grade connection and that we will look into, but I really think it's the Lucy Calkins is something to grow up to use.
Way earlier than
Yeah.
And as you guys, we mentioned earlier this year, mathematics this summer that was K through 12. So that was through the entire
Right.
spectrum. We had a team
Right.
together, and that work's continuing. It's a little more leveled now, but it's important.
One quick comment. I'm just speaking for myself, but I always expect all of you, the principals, to come back and ask us for resources. That's my expectation. You tell us what you're doing and then what you need to do it better. And that's always what I hope everyone does for us. That's what we need to know, right?
That's great. That's
So.
Thank you. Thank you. And
I'd work up the food chain first.
Just saying, right?
Wow, that's great. Okay.
Two good suggestions, right?
Yes, good. And one more ELA English comment. The English coordinator has been doing really great stuff and participating with elementary and middle school and translating that to the high school. And Laureen Marks has been in our building with the English coordinator, Carrie Caffrey, and then the history coordinator, Debbie Blackwell. So again, those are my departments. The four of us have been meeting, talking a lot about writing, and the history department has a goal this year of increasing their process writing. And what I keep saying as a 25-year veteran history teacher is that the history departments usually teach often as much or sometimes more writing, as English. So that's something we're focusing on in the English department too.
Thank you. Ms. Holman, do we get, she excused?
Yeah, she does have a sick animal.
No, yeah.
I
It's
also
okay.
want to have time for everyone else.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you, Ms. Holman, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.
Ms.
I
McQuaid.
think you're on.
If you don't make full sentences, we do understand because you have been with Nature's Classroom, so.
I'm going to do my best. The only slide I'm going to look at all night is this one. Bill McQuaid, middle school principal, and the 7th grade last year just did a phenomenal job in both math and ELA. And I think one thing I need to highlight for all of us who either, if you are not a 7th grade parent or a recent one or not a middle school educator, 7th grade's a tough year because there's a lot of adolescent stuff going on there. So academics typically is not one of our highlight. It's more like, can we just try to settle them down kind of thing. So it's even a more exciting outcome this year. So ELA in particular was very exciting because if you remember from last year, that line was going the other way and we had a lot of discussion. We had a pretty big dip in 7th grade ELA. Just as a reference point, the combined high and very high growth score for 7th grade ELA last year was 38%. So that growth this year was very exciting to see. It jumped to about 57, I think, %. So that was really exciting. And then we also see the top chart for ELA. We see it go up at the end. And this is the kind of data, Dr. Price, that I'd like to trust. And then we also see on the right-hand side the math. And again, we're moving into our 3rd year now of our applied math science class, and they are sustaining excellent work for all kids. So that's really exciting to see. So if Jim, could you go to the next slide? We can talk a little bit about what we did to change. We'll start with 7th grade. We started very early. In fact, Gilly made his yearly trip over to look at Edwin with us and all that kind of stuff with the 7th grade teachers. They actually put in their evaluation goals, and what they really wanted to do was really go in very deep into the Edwin data, and they did. So the outcome of that was increased collaboration, and what we really saw some strength, and Dr. Price already mentioned that, was it wasn't just the ELA teachers that dove into what was going on in ELA. It was a combined effort with ELA, social studies, and special ed. So that made a huge difference. And then we found that there was going to be no long comp, and there was going to be PERC-led questions, which Gilly already referenced. And what that really means was how to respond to literature, and the way the questions were framed is students needed to come up with multiple pieces of evidence from paired texts. So they had 2 texts going, they had to read those, and they had to use different pieces of evidence from, in mind, these are 7th graders. So that piece was something that the teachers in a combined effort spent a lot of time working with the kids on. And then that combined effort was a significant cross-curriculum alignment. So there was a aligned effort with social studies and ELA teachers. For example, they would take a social studies content or topic and really write about it in ELA with special ed support. All 3 teams did this, and it made a big difference. So that was very exciting. If you also notice the last bullet, our student growth for students with disabilities
went up pretty high too. So in ELA, so from 46 to 63. And so that, again, very exciting and something to celebrate. Lots of smiles going on in the 7th grade. And again, then the math, AMS continues to make a big difference, and they also are a very strong collaborative group, the 3 math teachers and the 3 AMS teachers, and it shows. So our area of concerns, did you skip a slide? Is the math story? It's after that one? Okay. So we do have inconsistent growth in math, and we know that, and we expected that, especially in 8th grade. However, we need to continue to look for ways, and if you look at the charts there, the growth does dip for all students in 8th, and it did go down a little bit in 6th, which I'll speak about in a couple slides from now. But the other piece of that is our achievement levels remain high in 8th grade in math. So we have the dip, and there's connections there with AMS, but they are still achieving at a relatively high. So what that all means. This is a slide, the math story. So we felt after a lot of discussion with the math teachers, it was important to point out and recognize that more time on learning matters. And not only is it time on learning, but it's very high instructional approaches in 7th grade. The applied math, actually, I want to change the name now. It's almost more applied math and not as much science as we originally thought when we developed the class. But they take the math skills and apply them, put them in real-life situations, and it makes a difference. So if you look at the purple, very big in 7th grade and much smaller in 6th and 8th. And if you basic math, they're getting double math time in 7th grade. So again, an awareness and what that all means and what systemic approaches for the future, that's all further discussion down the road. So,
Looking at the very high growth for our students with disabilities in applied math and science does demonstrate that for many of our kids, they just need more time on task.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, too, what was exciting, when we first started the AMS class 2 years ago, there was a lot of discussion of not putting special ed students in there. And what was very exciting is the teachers said they absolutely need to be in there, and it came from our special ed teachers. So that was, and it showed after 2 years later how important it was for them to be in an inclusive setting with high levels of instruction.
Okay. Sorry. Was last year the first year?
Second.
Second. So we're in our 3rd year now.
Reflect AMS.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
My daughter was
All right,
one of
because
them.
I couldn't remember when we started it.
Yeah.
I knew it was very recent, but okay.
Yep. So we're in our 3rd year already. So also our area of concerns too with our high needs group, and you guys have we've seen these slides before. One thing I wanted to point out, if you remember last year the school committee did approve an additional teacher in our related arts rotation for French, so we could bring French to 6th and 7th graders in our related arts classes. So out of that, we also were able to eliminate grade level from all 3 grades, which exciting.
So we did not think we could do that, but over the
but we
summer,
did.
Dr. McQuaid and Steve Wrigley were able to eliminate grade level from all grades.
Yeah, even the 8th grade. Yeah, it was exciting.
For one related arts position.
Right, it made a big difference. So what came out of that, and I need to give full credit to Steve Wrigley and Cheryl Ramondo for this idea. So with the removal of grade level, we were able to increase team collaboration time. That's the academic teams meeting together. So once a week we now have, they meet as a team for once a week, and then the other time that used to be grade level, they now meet as what we call team study. And what they're doing is they're taking one child and from our high needs group and having discussions about ways to help this child, and following that data they're discussing strategies. And Donna, so this is well before any kind of SAT. This is all from a general ed approach, so it's really exciting. And they've been wanting to do this for so long, but we never could find the time nor the consistency and follow-up. So this time has allowed us to do that, so thank you. It's had multi purposes of success. And then, as you remember, last year we reorganized special education, so I now have Mr. Lyons here, which is great. And so we're getting a lot of positive from there. And with that, with reorganizing special ed, we will also be able to reorganize our schedule a little bit, which opened up more opportunities for special ed teachers to meet with general ed teachers to collaborate. And you saw that in 7th grade. And then we also have some concerns in our LEP IEP students, and I know Gilly has probably spoken to you already about structural ways from a district perspective and how we're looking to support them. And lastly, I think, is our sixth grade. Our sixth grade, we did find some concerns there in both math and ELA. We dipped. So they're pretty self-explanatory. So as we dug into data and what could we learn from seventh grade, that's on the next slide, Jim, is sixth grade ELA, I think similar to the high school, they jumped all over these MCAS scores, which was great. We already had the ring marks in. We started Lucy Calkins on our own to try to keep the continuum going. They were in the summer, opening up kits, really kind of dig in. Lorraine came by and helped us. We've already started one group of teachers in social studies and ELA to design units, and then they'll mirror those for the other teachers, sort of, again, following the seventh grade ELA social cross-curriculum approach. And then they also, again, are going to increase the exposure, the response to literature. They did not do that last year to the depth that the seventh grade did, and it showed. And the other thing, too, is we have two new teachers in sixth grade ELA. Last year we had some unanticipated change when it was an early retirement. That did impact when we talk about strong collaboration teams. So we're expecting to see some change there. Math, when they delved into their data this summer, most of my math teachers were at the summer should we call it retreat, of looking at data. And one of the things that they really discovered is that they needed to better align their scope and sequence and really concentrate on 3 essential standards in an aligned way. We had, for some reason, I'm not sure why, again, more discussion needed, fell a little bit away from that. So they're going to be doing a lot more with, especially with ratios and number sense. Those are the 2 that they really need to align better on. So we expect to see improvement there. And I think that's about it.
All right, thank you, Dr. McQuaid. Do you have any questions? Any further questions, I should say? That's okay. That's all right. No worries.
Thank you so far. Thank you.
Sam? Back to Mr. Gross.
Just briefly, noticing that you jumped up 10 full percentile rank points in 4 years, I think that speaks for itself. I know that's very hard to do, and that's a significant accomplishment. So congratulations to the team. Like you, very concerned about the 6th grade ELA and the growth, and I think it seems to be foreshadowing what's going on in the high school. So I would encourage us to pay attention to that and work together across that transition. Because I think the Calkins is a good start, but losing a teacher and having an entire grade suffer because of that's unacceptable. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McQuaid, very much. We're going to go to, because you're going to do the Atkinson presentation?
I can fill in for Greg.
But we're going to go to Franklin now. You're stuck here anyway, so they don't understand.
To leave?
No.
No, people will stay, but they're going to.
It's up to you, but we're gonna go to Franklin right now. We'll go to Franklin. Mr. Clark.
Billy and I worked on this whole how he was going to leave me in
Okay. You gotta wing it then.
All right. So this first slide you can see we're looking at the percent of proficient and advanced for ELA this year. You can see that we had a little bit of growth in both 3rd grade and 5th grade and a little bit of a dip in the 4th grade. You'll notice we're still well above the state line. We're still working hard. If you remember last year when we spoke, ELA was going to be the focus for us last year. That was what we were going to be working on because of the 2, math and ELA, that was where we had the weaker scores. So I said, all right, this is what we're going to focus on, this is what we're going to focus on. So when we looked at the data, we were all very proud of the work we had done last year. We did a lot of looking at student work, a lot of teacher collaboration. I think if you remember, we started talking about Clark's Classroom and how that was going to be brought in, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But we were looking at the 4th grade, and we have such a phenomenal team there. We're like, well, what happened? So we were really digging into the data, and we looked at the student growth percentiles, and literally from 2008 to the current, every year it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So we're trying to figure out why would that be? Why would that be? And there's many different reasons. But one thing that I've noticed, and it just kind of came to me a few weeks ago, this is now my third year at the Franklin School, and this is the third different fourth grade team I've had. Every year, because of the nature of a bubble school, people move up, people move down, people move around. So getting that consistency of a team is really important, especially when Dr. Price was talking about those strong teams. Now, I have strong teachers at that fourth grade level, but when you're trying to build that trust and trying to build that collaboration, that takes time. It does. And when we were doing the Clark's Classrooms last year, it was incredible because we were able to have teacher collaboration. For those of you who don't remember, Clark's Classroom is when I take the grade level of students and I work with them on raise values. I work with them on building that character piece of the education. Meanwhile, my assistant principal is facilitating, looking at student work protocols with the classroom teachers, the teaching assistants that work at that grade level, and the special educators that work at that grade level. It's a great time for collaboration. And that was really the first year that we were able to have that collaboration piece. And a lot of that was building trust and opening doors and can we come in? So I'm really excited about where we're going now, because we're continuing that. We've already had some Clark's Classrooms. We're getting those people back into the seats again. We're seeing a lot more co-teaching happening in the classrooms. I've had a few pockets over the course of the time I've been there that I've seen, and now those pockets are starting to spread, which is really great. So now, thinking about this and thinking about how much time we spent on ELA, I'm looking at the next slide, Mr. Mealy, and I'm wondering, okay, so my math, each grade level went down a little bit. So now I'm wondering, okay, is this a rookie mistake? Did I focus too much on ELA? Because almost every collaboration time, almost every Clark's Classroom time, almost every professional development time was centered around ELA. And we looked at math, we worked through math, we looked at the data, of course. But I wondered, did I spend too much on ELA? And do I need to, as I'm developing as an instructional leader, do I need to figure out how to balance the two as well? So I'll lay on the sword a little bit for that one, I guess. But there are some positives. I mean, you can see, even though we have those little downward trends, the downward trends are pretty consistent. So to speak to what Dr. Price was mentioning earlier, is it a trend? Is it what the test was, the questions? We're looking into that. We're really digging into that data. So what are some of the things that I take away from this? Well, we are very consistent. We stay pretty much where we are. The dips and the heights, they're going along with the district, they're going along with the state. And we really tend to try to break down, and I know everybody does, we try to break down item by item. Where are we going wrong? Let's look at the strands. Let's look at the content. Okay, geometry. Geometry comes up every year, man. That is the one that is always the struggle for us. But when we looked at an item analysis, we figured out we scored higher than the state on 95% of the test questions. And we're proud of that. There are 300 questions. There are 100 at each grade level between the two tests. There were only 15 of those 300 questions that we were at the same level or just below the state average. So that's something that we celebrate and we were proud of, and we're able to kind of dig into it and say, okay, we're able to look at how do we do on these last year, these content standards last year. So moving forward, last year we spoke about this, and I'm going to speak about it again. There's a lot of colors up there, and my eyes are trying to adjust to them all. But the red bar is the one we're looking at. I might need your glasses, Mr. Gilligan. The red bar is the one we're looking at, and that's the student with disabilities subgroup. And that subgroup dropped pretty significantly for us last year. Now, an important number to keep in mind is the number of students in that subgroup, and it is 36, which is not substantial. So when you look at, on the next slide, you'll see there are about 70% of those students, which is 25 students, scored in the needs improvement or warning category. So we only had about 30% of, which is about 11 students. Oh, it's exactly 11 students, actually. It's about 11 students that were proficient or higher. One thing that we were able to look at, and I want to kind of give kudos to Mr. Gilligan, Dr. Price, and Alicia Murray, for those of you who don't know, who created some great graphs for us. We were able to look at change over time for a specific group of students. It was our 5th grade students with disabilities subgroup. And in both ELA and math, from the time they were in 3rd grade to the time that they were in 5th grade, they moved up at least one category, from warning to needs improvement, warning to proficient. Some went from needs improvement to advanced. So we're seeing great growth. We're excited about what we're seeing, but we're very aware that there's still a lot of work to do. And we still need to, because 25 students is still 25 students too many for me. So how do we do that? We created a schedule last year on finding ways to make get the most bang for our buck, basically, including Clark's Classroom and having that collaboration time. But really, how can we make sure that our special educators are able to see students as much as they can in the sub-separate setting for those C-grid pullouts, but also in the classroom where the instruction is happening. Get them in the classrooms, and that's what we're starting to see this year. We're 2 months in, and I'm already starting to see more co-teaching. I'm seeing classroom teachers and special educators working seamlessly together in a lot of classrooms this year, and it's exciting. So we're continuing to look at that. The schedule is always going to be something that it's in a state of flux. We're always going to be tweaking it. We're always going to be trying to find the best way to make it work. And we may never get there, but we're always going to try to improve it. And then just really trying to find more and creative ways to get teachers talking and get teachers working together. In Clark's Classroom, selfishly for me, I love sitting with the kids and I love working with them and I love having 100 faces all stare at me beamingly in adoration. But
I've been there, Mr. Cummings.
But it's a great time for me because, just in our first class, Clark's Classroom, we talked about building relationships, and I think it's important for me to have a relationship with them, and I think it's important to build those relationships with the whole grade level at the same time. But at the same time, what they don't know is that we're also building relationships down the hall. Mrs. O'Loughlin, my assistant principal, is doing a fantastic job facilitating those groups and leading that collaborative piece. And I couldn't praise her enough for doing that. We're also looking creatively at all of our schedules to find more time to meet, to find more time to work together. So many of my teams have working lunches where they sit together and they talk about what's going on. Usually they devote either Monday or Friday to, okay, so what did you watch on TV this week? But the rest of those working lunches are all looking at student work and talking about it. I often see them with their model classroom projectors shining high and looking at what's going on and what are we doing, especially with Lucy Calkins. Lucy Calkins is becoming a big piece of it, and it's inclusive. We're having all students in the classroom during writing time, and it's so important to do that. And our teachers are excited about it because it's a chance to see all of our students performing in the classroom with their peers, with writing partners, talking about work with their friends. It's a different way of thinking about writing, but it's a fantastic way of thinking about writing, and I'm really excited, and our teachers are really excited about what that's going to look like going forward. So, yeah, Franklin, out.
Yeah.
Any questions? I just have one comment, Mr. Clark. I
Yes.
really
Appreciate hearing your self-evaluation about balancing ELA and math. I mean, that's something that I think about a lot when I hear these kinds of presentations, because we do often focus a lot on ELA.
Right.
And I think that's just something that we need to continue to be aware of, and someone needs to be aware of, not us, not the school committee. That's not our job. But I
You need to be aware that I'm aware of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I appreciate you saying that. And it does sound to me, this may be too much of a leading question, but it sounds to me like, given the good work that your assistant principal is doing, maybe more effort in that area might be helpful or something, to help with the collaboration or something. I'm just wondering.
I would agree. Wholeheartedly, yeah.
Thank you very much. Very, very good analysis.
One quick question. Can you go back to the first slide, Franklin, first slide? I'm not sure we have a 2016 result on fifth grade ELA. Looks like it was truncated in the graph.
Oh, yeah, it does. On the bottom.
Yeah.
Which one? The yellow?
No, it's missing 16.
It's missing
Below.
2016.
Sorry.
Okay, I didn't know whether it was the pamphlet or if it was.
It's just that we,
Okay.
yeah, of all the graphs, it was a cut and paste.
No problem, no problem.
Sorry.
Just to know if it was on the document. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
They went up 2 percentage points from last year.
Okay,
There
thank
you
you.
go. No problem.
There's a replay.
It's actually on our little paper. Oh, that's Kittredge, sorry.
So, yeah, I mean, your observation about the teams modulating with classes and having to move around, I think that's very insightful. I hadn't considered that as another perturbation to the system. So I think if we can't replicate that excellence in the functional team, we might want to think about keeping the excellence together and figuring out what students would most benefit from that, as a way to, to move it forward without actually, breaking every couple of years. But I think that's hopefully something you're thinking about.
Yep, thank you. So the only comment, I love, again, just thinking outside the box, right? Clark's Classroom, right? There's a million things that I'm sure you could be doing, that you probably end up doing late at night and, weekends and all of that. But, what a great thing you give to your staff is that time, that you kind of offer up for that. So thank you for that. And I know that the kids love Clark's Classroom. So they do look at you with... they do look at you with, a lot of admiration and, so you can pay me later, but, No, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next presentation, Mr. Clark. Thank you. Moving on to Kittredge. Mr. Cushing.
Kittredge Elementary School principal. Cushing. And I just want to say, Mr. Clark, you're always giving me a hard time about when you have to follow me after I tell like a summertime story or something. But, thank you. I'd like to first start out about talking about my talks with kids in Cushing's Corner. Okay, no. But first of all, I'd like to look at, our areas of strength and improvement. Last year, our focus really was ELA, and we do meet with teachers quite frequently. We have groups of teachers who are meeting at least twice a month looking at student work, and that's actually done, through scheduling throughout the school day. We have grade levels who are working, not just amongst themselves. We have grade level meetings where teachers are looking at data and looking at student work, to inform their instruction. But we're also working with, the second grade will come in and work with the third grade. The third grade works with the fourth grade, fourth and fifth, so on and so forth. We also have, through our PD in the afternoons, we're able to work with educational clusters, we call them, and that is like K to 2 will meet together so that we can see the progression of students and what students need from one grade level to the next grade level, and how is that happening, when we look at our assessments, and also, we have grade level clusters of grades 3 through 5. So last year was a real focus on ELA. We looked at some of, the subgroup of, our high needs kids, and also some of those kids who just fall below benchmark, that aren't in any of those categories. And so you can see, by, these charts that our overall performance in fourth grade, we had a nice increase. We had a substantial increase in ELA in fifth grade. We saw the same dip that everyone has seen in third grade, although, I'm sure if you can see the trend, we have been above, the state, average, for years now. So I would imagine it still was, I would imagine it would have been over that average still. But now when we look at that, we're saying to ourselves whether or not it is the questioning that is on the test or the instruction that went on in the third grade, at our school, we're looking at it, we're diving into what were the questions that were asked, what do we need to do, how do we respond to that through our instruction? And so if it's a trend where the state is moving towards a certain pattern of questioning, well, we need to get our kids ready for that. So we're digging deep into that. Our third and fourth grade teachers are working relentlessly to look at it. The third grade teachers so that they can inform their instruction to see where they were last year and is there anything that they missed. And now our fourth grade teachers need to look at it because they're teaching these third grade teachers, these third grade students. So, there's a lot of things that, there's a lot that informs our instruction because we have the district-wide map testing, which we use. We have the formative assessments. Any homework that we give, through Kittredge is a form of assessment. because it's not busy work for the students. It's really assessing just, what are the teachers teaching, and did the kids get it? We had a situation the other day where we met with our third grade team, and one of the teachers said, listen, look at this. I taught this math lesson, and, what's going on? Because all the kids, 50% of the kids, when they did their homework assignment, didn't get it. So what ended up happening was we analyzed what her lesson plans were, what she did, what direction did she take in the classroom, and we were meeting with, fourth grade teachers. So, the teachers are not afraid, to actually put themselves out there to show what they are doing so that they can get a better response from our special ed department, a grade level above or below, on how they are actually instructing our students. And maybe, change that instruction. And so there was a lot of reteaching that actually went on, an assessment. She actually assessed the kids the next day to make sure that they actually had the concept before moving on. 80% of all of our students last year were proficient or higher in ELA. Some of the strong points were grade 4 went from, for proficient or higher, we improved from 73% in grade 4 to 78%. We saw a great jump in grade 5 from 81% to 92%. I think that we have, we're seeing the result of a couple of things. We really focused in on actually having our kids respond to fiction as opposed to constantly looking at nonfiction, writing and having the kids respond to those passages. And we really feel that it really has, broadened really the horizons of the kids. And we focused in on that on 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade last year. But I think you can really see the results. And if you talk to Mrs. Broderick, one of our 5th grade teachers, she definitely would, carry the sign around, telling people that this was necessary. And the other thing is, and I'm not sure that, a lot of our teachers actually were taught or went through trainings approximately 3 years ago on Lucy Calkins. And even though, we might not see a lot of typical Lucy Calkins lessons, at this point going on, we do see the impact and the effect of, the strategies that she talks about, and so we definitely see that and that improvement in our writing. There is no question about it. Additional improvements to highlight, our focus was on, the high needs subgroup. And again, like I said, not just that subgroup, but also all of those kids who were falling below grade level benchmark, because there were some of our kids fall into that, the category of all students. But they're not in the high needs category. So we've got to look at that too. So there's a major focus on all of those students last year. And applaud this, would you, Dr. Price? Okay, because I'm going to talk about CPI.
It's great you can talk about CPI.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, it's just it's just that for us, to really look at, we've consistently looked at this over the years, and even though we're looking at, our students, who are proficient or higher, who are falling into those categories of wanting and needs improvement, this really is something that we just have tracked, to make sure that we've had steady improvement, because it is an amalgamation of everything together. Everything we do. And you can see that with that particular subgroup of children with high needs, the CPI score went from 84.7% in 2015 to 93.8%. And again, in math, it went from an 82.6% to a 91.1%. And
Gilligan, so in the CPI 70, so that's way above target.
way above target.
Yeah.
It is.
CPI only has 4 categories, not 0.157.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can see, though, we still have, the area of concern for us still, are our high needs areas, our low-income students as well as our special needs students. And we still have a high percent, I think just like Mr. Clark said, a high, the percentage of kids that we really still need to target are in those categories. And we've done a lot this year to really look at, to bring into, our meetings, our data meetings, looking at student work meetings, our special ed teachers, reading support is joining us this year, and just so that we can really get their point of view. Because what we do is, those specialists really help us with the classroom teachers when it comes to, and again, you guys have all heard about, the RTI and tiered levels of instruction. So what ends up happening is, they're able to come in and really help our regular classroom teachers on things that they can do at that tier 1. In the classroom, different strategies that they can use, as opposed to, and I'll be honest with you, we look at the tier 1, we look at tier 2 interventions, and that really does limit the number of students that get referred, to, which kind of clogs up our special ed track of people testing kids to find out where they are, because we've already done all this, precursory, evidence seeking, to find out what is it that a specific kid needs. So to have all the specialists there, they see the value of working with our classroom teachers. It's great. So again, I think, again, the takeaway was the high needs group ELA improvement from 2015 was good. That high need, it rose from 50% to 56%. However, we did see a decrease in the math. And again, we saw overall an increase in math at the school, but for this particular subgroup, we did see a decrease where it fell from 53% to 38%. When we really do some digging and we look at it, a lot of that cohort of students that fell in that high needs category were actually in the 3rd grade. So now what we need to do is we need to look at, was it the instruction, was it the exam, what do we need to do to make sure that group is uplifted. And of course, some of the action items, an analysis of the 2016, MCAS data. We've done a lot of that work already. Teachers are digging into, areas that, item analysis of, is there anything particular that we actually, blew on the test, and why, A couple of years ago, we did a lot of work on open response, and it really helped us out immensely. So a lot of that analysis is great, but again, there's a lot of other things that really inform our instruction, not just MCAS. And so it's all those other things that we're looking at, okay, that really, I think, push us towards the success that we've been seeing over the past few years. We use the MAP data. Again, we're going to maintain our service provider and classroom teacher collaboration time. It's vitally important. We're still going to look at our ELA improvement strategies, and again, we're going to look at having more structured writing lessons through the Lucy Calkins writing process. All of our teachers are trained at the school. We see lessons going on, I hope that on Monday, when we conduct our walkthroughs, administrative walkthroughs, we'll actually see some of those lessons going on also. So it's good. Again, we have teachers who are visiting each other's classrooms. We have teachers who are critiquing, how they're using Lucy Calkins in their classroom. So I can only see, again, success. Excellent. Could I just do one thing? I really would like to thank the staff at Kittredge, the parents for their support, and the students who believe in what we're doing. So, and that really has delivered a lot of success, to the Kittredge Elementary School.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Thank you.
Any questions for Kittredge?
I just had one quick one. If you showed us charts for math, like you showed us for ELA, would they look similar? What would they look like?
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very similar.
Any chance?
We'd see the third grade, again, a little downhill. We see great progress in fifth grade.
Okay.
And again, slight progress in fourth grade.
Interesting. Okay.
But if you looked at the student growth itself, we have grown unbelievably.
Great, thanks.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. I just remind Ed Foster, principal of Sargent School, I'd remind the committee that Sargent is the largest elementary school in the system, and there are way more kids adoring their principal at the Sargent than their schools. Particularly witches. Okay. So I too want to thank everyone involved at the Sargent. We did some wonderful things. I think you'll see a lot of positives in there. There's obviously places we need to work on, and we are working on those areas, but the kids and the staff did a marvelous job last year. Our motto of all in, that was our motto last year, continues. I'm trying to service the needs of all the kids at the Sargent School. So thank you. So the first slide you see there is the, again, you've been seeing this tonight, percentage proficient and advanced. And you can see overall, in this area, ELA, which is a little different than at Franklin, that we are having some dips, particularly in third grade and fourth grade. You'll see that in fifth grade, ours is the blue line there, that we are having some increases there in our proficient and advanced. So you'll see, and I'll be remarking on this toward the end about what we're going to be doing about that. But that's sort of a general area, particularly in the third and the fourth grade, that we're working on. The next slide is with the math. And when I say all in, our big focus last year, if you recall, was the math. I was sitting in this chair, and we said, okay, we're going to really kind of roll up our sleeves and do some things here over at the Sargent there. And we really did. We tied all the staff's goals in math. They have to have goals every single year. And every goal that every staff member over there had last year was in the area of some piece of math. All our building-based professional development was in math. You may recollect, it's not Cushing's classroom or Landry's lessons. We have Mathlete Madness that was started last year by our assistant principal Karen Leahy, which is done wonderfully with the kids. Not only is it a time when the kids go off with either myself, Miss Leahy, and a bunch of people. Carol Larkham was helping out a lot, Martha LeGros, lots of kids from the high school. We had volunteer parents from time to time. And what the kids are doing, we're dividing them up. They're working with Chromebooks on math problems and coding and that sort of thing, but also working in the gym with PE type math activities. But rigorous ones. Karen spends a lot of time sort of developing those. She's a PE teacher as well. And I think that shows a lot of the success that you're seeing there on the screen there. So we're very proud of that. And again, our data team meetings were all revolving around math last year. So that's where we're seeing that big jump. The biggest thing I'm proud of, I've always been a sort of an SGP guy as far as when you're looking at data. I think it's one of those data points that captures all kids, So you can have a kid who might be having some academic challenges, can show growth. You can have the top core group of kids in the school. You want them to show growth. You want to address, everyone's needs. So what you'll see here is, again, my squiggly blue line, is that we're raising that level. In fact, we were either at target, depending on the group, and I'll get into that in a second, or above target in the state for our growth, cohort growth with our kids, which we're really proud of. Telling me that and the staff that no matter who you're in the classroom, who's sitting in front of you, with the kids, that they're growing, they're doing things. So if you look at in grade 4 for a minute, again, you see that growth going up. We're at target. With the state wants you to be at the 51st percentile, and we are at there or above. In grade 5, I really have to remark, and I know in ELA, in math, that we need to kind of work on some of it with grade 5. But in math, we are at the 62nd percentile. That's where that ends up there, that line. And that's above target from what the state says. So we're really proud of that, the work there. And then this is out of control in my mind, and I've never seen a number like this, and I've been doing this for a while. The 5th grade SGP in ELA was at the 78th percentile, which is above the 60. It's really, really amazing. We're really proud of that fact. So. All right. So, Sergeant, takeaways. I think Gilly mentioned it earlier. We continue a steady upward trend from last year, and even over the last 5 years, we've risen our percentile up 17 percentile points as a school. ELA, again, we have an upward trend for grade 5 and proficient advanced. We have some work to do, you'll see in grade 3 and 4. In math, there's an upward trend in percentage of proficient advanced for really the whole school, but in particular grades 3 and 4. Okay. Again, above target, at target for our student growth percentile, all grades. Again, some great stuff there. And our main focus, what we get from this data as a school is, and we're going to be continuing our math work because we're doing some really nice work there. But our focus this year is going to be ELA, particularly in grades 3 and 4, to try to raise that proficient advanced percentage there. So how are we going to do it? Some of the next level of work. We go to the next one. We're going to continue last year's initiatives. It's one of those things when I think Joe mentioned it before. You don't want to be sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like sometimes you focus too much in one area, and I think that's what sort of came about with our ELA scores. We were all in on math, and we sort of took the eye off the ball a little bit in ELA. We want to continue the math work because we've made growth. We want to continue. We have really set up some really a nice foundation of where we want to go. Again, with the math, we have math enrichment. We have some after-school programs we want to get going. The Chromebooks, the after-school math. Teacher planning and collaborative time for initiatives. Math will still be in there, but also this year, part of the building-based PD is going to be work with foundations and Lucy Calkins with the staff. I mean, that's a big piece, and that's a big piece of the ELA that I'm expecting some nice results there. And what I'm most excited about is, and I have it the third bullet from the bottom, the intent-specific data team work in ELA and on math. This is a unique year, and I'm sure you've talked about it before, but we have additional librarian time working with the school, which is great for the kids in the classes, and they get to go to the library, which in my mind is really the lifeblood of the school. So it's nice to see that really starting to take off. But while they're there, that's time. That's extra time that we can organize and meet with teachers, and teachers can have that time to work. So in the past, we would do what we could to get sort of time to teachers to kind of look at data and look at their practice and that sort of thing. But now we do have a significant amount more that we can do that with, which I'm very excited for. What I'm looking forward to is sort of the next step in data work is we've always sort of looked at grade levels, and we have had the ability to dive down in particular classes. A teacher, how did the kids who are sitting in front of you do last year, and how did the kids that you had, how did the kids sitting in front of you, they did last year, and how did your kids who moved on, how did they do? And really diving into that, particular, not just the grade level, but particular that classroom. And we really haven't had the time, in my mind, to kind of do that in the past. So I'm really looking forward that not only are we going to do grade level work with these grade level trends, but a teacher's going to be really able to spend some time with her own class, his or her own class, and say, hey, I'm going to be looking into this area. I don't know why my kids didn't do that well in, say, topic development. And they have that information and can really kind of dive into it, drill down, and do some things with it. So we're really excited about that. We also have a reading intervention and coaching at the school. That's really for the lower grades, but the coaching part goes throughout, so that helps out with the reading. Teachers can work with Lorene and the reading coaches. And also, one of the benefits of a large school, besides being adored constantly, is that we have a reading resource center, a literacy resource center, which is now housed at the school, and where it's sort of where Lorene and her team work out of. So we can access that. Teachers have already been talking with the coaches, finding ways to kind of work with the kids better in the classroom. So that's really exciting. And finally, with the Lucy Calkins, it's some great stuff that's happening. The principals actually went to a workshop one day as well on it, and the teachers have been doing it and modeling it and working with each other. What I want, as an administrator, what I want to make sure is that we're focusing on doing it in the classroom and having the time to do it, because that's such a valuable resource. It's hard to do. I mean, you want to focus on reading. It's important. Math is important. And we want to make sure the writing is as important there. So we're spending time with the schedule working on that, making sure that the expectation is, and the reality is, that we're spending a significant time not only on reading and math, but now on writing. Last year, there was more of a focus on writing and making sure we're doing what we need to do in the classroom. Now, last year was math. Now writing is the main focus. So that's really going well thus far. That's it.
Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
I have kind of a generic one, really for everyone. I'm happy to mention a couple things, and we think of it again as to Mr. Clark as well. You all talked about drilling down to the student level where people are having trouble and trying to figure out what's going wrong, where are the specific questions that they're having trouble with. Is there ever an opportunity or a chance that people take to drill into the kids who actually get all the questions right? Because there are kids who do that.
Yes.
And pull them out and say, we've got 15 kids, 32, whatever kids, who are getting this all right. What are we doing with them to push them even higher up? That kind of ties to what Mr. Gross said earlier. I know you've got a million things you're doing, but I would love to see some emphasis on that end of the spectrum as well when we talk about educating all kids.
Right. Well, I can speak for me. That has been one of a focal point with our PD last year when that whole sort of term all in.
Right.
We spent a lot of time saying it's not just the kids who maybe are challenged more or the middle of the road. It's for those higher achievers. So we've spent a lot of time. We had some, thanks to Gilly and the central office, a professional development person, Caitlin Gaffney, came in and spent a lot of time with the staff on working on how do we rigorously challenge that population of kids. And so we've been working on that.
Just one comment on that. MCAS is not, we're doing an MCAS report. It's really most useful to help us
identify our struggling learners. MCAS is not really designed as a test for kids. It doesn't help us really identify the top level of kids. So if you think about what MCAS is a statewide test that ultimately kids have to pass to be able to get a high school diploma. And so the reality is, other data and other ways to look at those top level kids is much better than MCAS. MCAS is just not, so I was thinking of that as when I'm hearing the conversation tonight. MCAS is most useful for us to identify our struggling learners or areas in need of improvement. It's not the most useful metrics for us to identify the high achieving kids. I'm just going to be real honest. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we don't do it. It's just when we look at this is what it helps us do, because you just have to think of what the metrics is. Every kid in Massachusetts, that's what it was designed for, and that's going to help us with kids who struggle, but not our kids who achieve at high levels. I mean, I have to say, having come from a very high-performing high school, MCAS was almost irrelevant to us. And the reason for that was that 98, 99, I think in my entire 9-year history, I think I had 2 kids fail the ELA MCAS. So how is that useful?
Right.
And it goes back to her point about CPI earlier. You get 100 points on the CPI if you're proficient or above. So if you go from proficient to advanced, no score change.
Yeah, so it doesn't, so I think it's really important to understand that this is about our struggling learners, and other times we will talk, like as we talk a lot about Lucy Calkins, about our highest achieving kids getting pushed and all that. It's just, it doesn't lend itself to it.
That could be an agenda item for another day.
Yeah, I just think it's important.
Okay.
So before,
Thank you.
whoever puts this together next year, Gilly, could we put Thompson at the top?
Yes, we'll put Thompson first.
Mr. Raymond's always the last one in here.
No, but we like to save the best for last.
Oh.
Albert E. Thompson, Albert next year in the A's.
Okay, let's go to first names.
Excuse me, Chair, before we leave.
Oh, sorry, good. Apologize.
So a couple of quick items on.
Sorry.
Foster. Thank you. First, again, congratulations on the fifth grade math growth, and congratulations on school percentile rank increase. Again, recognize how hard that is and how important that is. I'm just a little surprised to see continue initiatives from last year, and I would be hoping that, given that we've done that for a few years now, and we don't seem to be moving the needle on not the SPG, the proficient and advanced. I'm just wondering, is there more that we could be doing rather than continuing the current initiatives? Because frankly, I'm just not seeing a dose response.
Well, in math, I mean, we did, move up, move the needle up there, and we established some foundational things that we really weren't really considering in the past. We had to spend a lot of work on kind of revisiting the core and what the Common Core and what teachers should be teaching in the class, and we've developed these strategies, and it's great to say, all right, now we got that, we can move on, but I think it's important for us to do these regularly and continue to revisit. I'm not saying that we're not going to be looking at anything else, particularly the ELA, but I think just sort of leaving it there is, it'll be just one of those sort of lost initiatives that never goes anywhere if we don't stay on top of it.
I hear
now,
you.
if we do it for a few years in a row and say, all right, we need to move on, but this was really some new stuff that really needed more than just that single.
Yeah, I think ELA, I buy in. I think what we're doing district-wide with regards to the Calkins program makes perfect sense. I'm just not quite sure how to interpret the math performance, and is there anything else that we should or could be doing there? That's my only comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Raymond.
Good evening, Chris Raymond, the principal at the
elementary school. Everyone stole my thunder. I was going to say best for last and all those things, but Gilly stole my thunder because he still has to present Atkinson. So yeah, I'd be in favor of flipping it so I could go first. But in keeping with the adoration theme first, I just have to tell my colleagues that it was my birthday this week. And, we're thought of at Thompson as small, but with our influx of 50 new students this summer, we're not so small anymore. And, I was sung to in every class, and I have reams of cards. So if you want to see adoration, guys, just come on over to the Thompson School. Anyway. So I'm going to focus mostly on, I'll reference the first few slides. I'm going to focus mostly on the last slide, which reflects our next level of work. As you're all aware, this is my second year at the Thompson School, so I think that next level of work is a critical and important thing to inform you of tonight. You've seen these slides before. The first slide reflects our ELA scores. In third and fourth grade, we experienced some dips. Third grade is sort of in line with the district. And as Dr. Price mentioned earlier, it's hard to know if that's a trend reflecting the test or if it reflects some other things. Fifth grade, we did have an increase last year. And on the next slide, Jim. In mathematics, a similar sort of mixed bag. The trend lines in third and fourth dipped again in third grade. It seems to be somewhat in sync with a district dip in fourth grade. We're certainly analyzing that, and we'll be analyzing that a little bit more deeply. And in fifth grade, we were quite pleased to see our scores go in the direction that they did this past year in mathematics. We've talked a lot tonight about students with disabilities. And the interesting thing about this slide is, I should say, is a 2-to-1 margin. Our students in mathematics seem to be performing at a much higher level than our students in ELA with respect to proficient or higher. However, we're still concerned about our students that are achieving in that warning level. And so as we've discussed tonight, we need to take a deeper dive and look at those students, and it's a really a big picture look in terms of what are we writing for goals on their IEPs, what types of services are we providing for them, what amounts of time are we providing for these students, and, you know, as was mentioned just prior, sometimes we have to do this in tandem with some of our other data that we have in the school. So MCAS is one piece, but we certainly need to look at it in tandem with everything else that we have. So the highlights, as I mentioned, advanced and proficient scores in grades 3 through 5 continue to be above the state average in both ELA and math, so that's the good news. And we're especially proud and pleased with the advanced and proficient scores in grade 5. ELA continued to increase, and the grade 5 math was actually surpassed both the district and state averages. So, you know, as was previously mentioned when thinking about high achieving students and so forth, what we really want to look at that is look at that from a standpoint of you know, what's going on there, and how are we achieving those scores, and is it through the schedule, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide, because I would argue there's some sort of intentional things going on with the schedule there that might have moved the needle in mathematics. The next level of work is probably the most important slide of these as I enter my second year at the Thompson School. A lot of this data, and a lot of the next level of work, I should say, that you see up here was really derived from my first year principal entry plan. And last year, some of the work up here represented things that we were exploring. So this year, we're beyond exploration, and we've taken some of that information, and we're now moving the needle and moving ahead on it, and we're making some changes and some revisions in some cases. And everything up here, I believe, represents the whole child. Academic success is important. We want our kids to be successful. Academically, we want them to achieve. But there's a lot of research to support the idea that if you're taking care of the social, emotional, and behavioral aspect of kids, the academic achievement will also follow. So I believe the bullets up here really represent the whole child look beyond just the academics. The first is our schedule, so that's going to be our really big focus this year. Last year it was a need that we sort of identified going into year 2, with particular focus on our grade levels collaborating, which has been the theme this evening, collaborative time between our regular educators and our special educators. I would also argue collaborative time for our special educators. One of the goals we're hoping to achieve in our new schedule is a planning time and collaborative time for just our special education team to be able to talk about some of those students in our school that they work with and sort of share that practice. And also intervention time. We really want to take a look and see how we can make those things happen and really institutionalize them into our schedule. So we actually started this work at our staff meeting yesterday, and I sort of kicked open the door, if you will, with the staff. I'm challenging all the beliefs this year. We're going through a process throughout the year with the goal being that next fall we're going to roll out a new schedule. Mr. Clark mentioned earlier that's not the ending point, though, and as we had pointed out with the staff yesterday in our staff meeting, wherever we end up at the end of the year will not be ultimately where we end up down the road. It's going to be our start, but it's something that's drastically needed at the Thompson School, so we can then, you know, take a look at our time. And the big thing is that time matters. There's a lot of power in a school schedule, and it's something that we really need to revise and redo. District initiatives, we're going to, through our PD this year, we're going to support the Lucy Calkins Writers Workshop model. A lot of the teachers were previously trained at Thompson, so we didn't have to train too many teachers this fall. So it's both supporting the teachers that had previously been trained and helping them move forward, but also our new teachers. I shouldn't say our new teachers, but our teachers who have been recently newly trained and how we move them forward. So, and also really looking at the foundations at the K-1 level. These two things directly support the district initiative, so doing that really through collaboration, practice sharing, and using some of the building-based PD days that we have this year. We really want to take a look at our school-wide data. We want to take a look at any relevant state data and our MAP data. And we really want to, we have established protocols for that we've been using. And this year, especially with the MAP data, last year was a pilot. This year, we really want to see how can we use that MAP data to support our classroom instruction and strategies that the teachers can use in their classroom. At the end of the school year, I actually did a deep dive into the school's MAP data and did a lot of learning. And then our third grade, our grade 3 through 5 teacher facilitator, Colleen Hallback, who's a third grade teacher in the building, she and I attended a training at the end of the summer. And we learned about a lot of reports that we can sort of utilize for teachers that both give you a broad brush lens look in the fall when thinking about whole group versus small group instruction, but also reports that teachers can use throughout the year. So in looking at the deep dive in this data, I'm really going to be looking for trends both at the grade level and at a teacher level as we go forward, so I can both, have a conversation with individual staff about things, but also as a grade level about some things maybe we can do to move forward. So it's a piece that we have that we want to see if it's a good piece of data that we can utilize to support kids. The last two bullets up there, we really want to move ahead with our pre-referral process. We want to make some recommendations for improvements and changes. It's something which I've talked about with Donna Straight, with our guidance counselor. When we think about our struggling learners or that, it's really a lot about what's happening prior to them even, getting evaluated to possibly be on an individualized education plan, and what kinds of intentional things and research-based practice are we doing ahead of that to support these students. And so what we're going to be doing this year is really looking at how we currently do that process, what suggestions could we do to make it better, and come up with some recommendations that maybe we can share across the elementary schools that would make a good lot of sense for our staff and for our kids. And then finally, we've, as an outcome of my principal entry plan last year, we created a RAISE committee. I have some very passionate, it's a cross-section of very passionate staff, because upon entering the school, one of the things I heard structurally was a lot about, this is how often we want all-school meetings, this is how often we don't want all-school meetings, this is what we think we should discuss, and so on. So the committee is really charged with looking at the structure for RAISE. We're really invigorating and in some cases reinvigorating the whole RAISE initiative. We've only had 2 meetings and we've already done an incredible amount of work, and our goal is to look at our structures, to clarify our expectations, and the ways that we acknowledge students across the building. One of the things we did do last year, which we're excited about, is we created a rubric of expected behaviors based off of the RAISE initiative across the settings at Thompson School. So this year, the goal is to get that out, get that front and center before kids and the staff. The staff participated in that. And how do we teach those expected behaviors, and how do we support that work through meeting structures at the school? So we're super excited about that, and that's really where we're going this year. It's a lot, but we've tried to focus it as much as possible, because if we can focus it, I feel like we'll do these things really well instead of having a whole bunch of things and none of whom we can carry out too well. And the final thing I would just say is next Thursday we have the annual Veterans Day program, which has been a big tradition at Thompson and one which I inherited and I'm proud to carry on. And I'm emceeing this year, so Gilly's coming over. He gave it up. He gave it up. So it's around 8:30 next Thursday, so if you'd like to come over, we welcome you. So thanks, Amy. So thank you very much.
So one of the things that principals and I discussed is I'm meeting with them now for all of their goals, and one of the things that's part of their evaluation process is a school improvement goal, 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And actually what we thought would be important for you to see is when they share those with me and we agree to those, I will come back and actually to share those with you as kind of our school improvement conversation, so that you can see that each of them, based on the data and based on their conversations, is coming up with school improvement goals. Rather than bring them all back in front of you, I thought it would be good to have them show you what their analysis is and then bring back their school improvement goals.
Thank you.
Okay?
Why don't we quickly go through the Atkinson?
Yeah, I just have a couple slides for Atkinson.
Yeah, let's just do that really quick. Is this presentation on the website yet?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a request. I mean, when we break out the high needs groups, I think that's very helpful and insightful, but I think we really need some mass groups that have less than 5 in them. We might want to take a look at the material and make sure that we're not showing a breakout for less than 5 students in a subgroup. I can show you where in particular.
Okay, we did that in light colors at some places just to demonstrate it.
I'm pretty sure whatever we have is probably.
But yes, okay.
Okay.
And when you make the adjustments here, would you paginate these, please?
Sure.
So we can refer to
Yep, we can do that.
slide 52 or 47.
Yep, we know there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I know. Great.
That's great information. Thank you.
All right, I think there was really some interesting, Greg T. Gilligan, not Greg T. Landry, for Mr. Landry. But I think there's really 2 interesting trends here. As you can see in 3rd and 5th grade, the trends are they're downward and similar to the district trends. But when you look at 4th grade in ELA and math, and if you can toggle back and forth, Mr. Mealy, at the Atkinson School, the 4th grade cohort made upward trends in both. And that was a little bit different than the district trends of either flat line or slightly down. So I know that's something that Mr. Landry wants to look at. I also think it's really important to make clear, Mr. Landry, the Atkinson School was their percentile rank was 36 back in 2012, and they hit 57 last year. They're down 49, so they're plus 17 or whatever that is. There are some challenges that are unique to the Atkinson. Last year, out of 188 students tested, 91 were high needs. So it's about 49%. And I also want to say that, you know, they're 23.6% economically disadvantaged. That's a new term the state uses. It probably correlates to about, you know, Thompson's about 40% free and reduced this year, and Atkinson's about 50% free and reduced. And I mention that because it's sometimes a shock to folks when they hear that. So I know Mr. Landry wants to look at that. If you can go to the slide of the 5th grade. So when you look at the cohort of the 5th grade, they're fairly consistent, but this is, with 50% of the kids being high needs, this group had the biggest high needs group that has come through the Atkinson in a long time. And they've done a tremendous amount of work in some of these different areas. And I think, you know, a lot of people talked about synergy tonight, about teams. A couple of things that happened across the district that people forgot to mention, but that go along with that is, one is that Jackie and Ann are doing these coaching cycles for the Tier 1 coaching, and that's with teachers all across the district. But secondly, when these guys were talking about putting together good teams, Mr. Landry did quite a big restructure at the beginning of the year. I think, Dr. Price, I think there's 8 teachers at different grade levels now.
Every team got changed.
Every team got changed. And that wasn't, you know, because he just wanted to change it up. He was looking at information where they've had success, looking at the data, and he wanted to put together the best teams that he could put together possible to serve those kids. Because when half your kids are high needs, you have to have a collaborative, highly functioning team. If you go to the takeaways, much like other teams, Greg runs Landry Lessons. One of the, you know, having the 20 early releases this year. I mean, we always want more time, and these guys are creative in finding time. But for having 7 district days for the Lucy Hawkins and math stuff, but for them to have the ability to have that time and then create the additional time for teachers to collaborate, look at student work together, has been really good. With the Title I funding, Thompson and Atkinson have been able to hire some extra Title I aides. I'm really pleased to say, you know, when I went over to Atkinson today, I think the ELL teacher said that they hit 31 for ELL students as of yesterday. I think they started the year at like 20, so they've had quite a few move-ins. But he was able to hire a bilingual Title I aide who speaks Portuguese and English, and he has a big Portuguese population that's been moving in. And the Thompson was able to hire a Title I aide.
I have two of them that speak Spanish.
That speak Spanish, and that is of huge benefit to us because although ELL, those students, they speak English and Spanish, their parents don't speak any English at all, and it's really, the family engagement piece is huge. And we just got, Woodridge is just going to be up and running next week. We had a little trouble getting in earlier because I guess there's a whole new renovation of their rec center, so we found a different spot on the Woodridge campus, so to speak, and I have a meeting next week at Royal Crest. We think we're going to be able to get that up and running. We don't have the Merrimack volunteer, the intern this year, but we're going to be able to get that up and running. I'm not going to repeat the Lucy Calkins and foundations and the math curriculum work going on. And Greg is taking a hard look. I know he's talked to Donna about it, about the MCAS alt portfolio, and that is rather than taking the traditional MCAS test, he thinks he may have some students that are more appropriate for that. And he's working hard with Donna to identify those students because they may have, in some cases, taken the test in the past, and it might be more appropriate for them to take the MCAS alt. You know, he's been able to bring in some Chromebooks for the ELL students, and Chris and Greg are also getting some Chromebooks in for the Title I work that they're doing through the Title I funding. And then just, he wanted to mention, he had the data. He had some data. Greg had about 18 slides, but we didn't want him to go longer than Rich, so we cut it down.
So you're presenting?
Yeah. I think this is pretty quick. I would just say that the other thing too is Greg last year through some Title I funding, we got a late bus for kids. Because a lot of Greg's kids aren't, there's neighborhood kids, but there's a lot of kids. We have almost 400 kids that come from Royal Crest to our public schools. And we have kids from Woodridge and all over. So we were able to get a late bus for an ELA group and a math group before both testing windows, and Greg's kept meticulous data on it. Some areas look good. There's a mixed bag in others where there weren't the gains that we anticipated. But I thought it was a really creative idea. It's something that we're going to look to do again, not only at Atkinson, but Chris is interested in it at Thompson as well. So that's the Atkinson school. I think the main takeaway is the 3rd and 5th were consistent, it looks like, across the district. And the 4th really looked promising. So I know I think it will be interesting to look at what are some of those practices, what do some of those teams look like, what are those dynamics. And the last piece I'll just mention, for the sake of everyone, is the 3rd grade test historically had been probably what some people would say the kids scored the best on. You always saw the 3rd grade up here and then the 4th grade trend here. And it's just interesting that there's no state line because only 28% of the districts took it. But I suspect that the 3rd grade test was different, or maybe quite different than it has been in the past. That's just speculation, but anyway, the Atkinson School.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliam.
I have a quick question.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think looking at the impact of the Woodridge program and the late bus, brilliant, and it would be very good to see. And what are you looking for in particular? Is it CPI or is it?
I think with so you look at it two ways, as Jen said. You can put growth here, and it's like a quadrant, and you want to see. And performance can go up this way. So you have growth this way, performance this way. You want to get higher performance, but more importantly, you want the kids to grow. Mm-hmm. Because these kids are lumped together. They're grouped with the kids across the entire state of Massachusetts, not just North Andover. Right. So growth is probably the most important. Remember, CPI now is just, you get 25, 50, 75, or 100, and they just average the school. So we certainly look at the CPI, and they certainly have those.
Makes sense. And my point, I guess, is if you can show that there's a causal relationship, or there's something that's tangible coming out of that pilot, that would be a very interesting budgeting discussion. Because, I mean, one of the challenges that I have is year over year, it's like we really don't have we don't seem to have a relationship between if we invest in this, we can move the needle.
I can guarantee this. It goes back to what Chris said. There's a lot of research out there that if we attend to the needs of kids social emotional needs and that caring. There was a study at University of Chicago like 7 or 8 years back. They just took care of the kids' emotional needs with social emotional. Nothing changed in academics, and the test scores were up like 13, 14%. I think some kids really do benefit from those programs, and Greg's been keeping like the boot camp data.
Yeah.
But more than anything, these are kids who are connecting with an adult in their life that they normally wouldn't connect with, and the research is really clear. If we don't take care of that need first, they're never going to access the curriculum.
I would disagree a little bit with that, Mr. Gross. You invested in applied math and science, and we've seen incredible results as a result of that. So I think that there are examples in North Andover where the school committee has made a decision, and I think applied math and science, 80 median SGB is unheard of in the state. It probably is the highest in the state. So I would argue that there are some good examples.
Let's find more.
And I'm pretty hopeful and confident that we're going to see the same with Lucy Calkins. So I think we are seeing places where we invest. I think the challenge for us is our principals are focusing on certain areas, and the question is, how do we sustain that focus and then focus on another thing? And if I have any take from this is, Ed was working really hard on math, and maybe ELA didn't work very well. Richard was working really hard on ELA, and there were some issues in math. How do we get that consistency that we're not kind of shooting at different issues every year? But I do think there are some examples in North Andover where we invested, and we have seen some success.
Point made. The last question I have is, what is alt MCAS?
It's for students who are on IEPs I'll let Donna do that. It's better, she's better than me.
If there's a small percentage of students based on a very specific criteria that because they're not accessing or they don't have the capability to access the general curriculum, and they have a very different curriculum that they're being served, that we create a portfolio that shows their progress. And the portfolios are based on the state standards, but based on the state standards and their IEP goals together. And so we collect data throughout the year and put a portfolio together of their work and of their progress, and then we send that in. And it's included, we have some video pieces of the students at work and doing different types of activities, generalizing certain skills depending on what particular skills are. And so there's a team of people that then assess what the students' goals are, and did they make what they consider to be sufficient progress to be proficient, or, so on. So,
does that impact the student's ability to receive a diploma?
yes. Students on alt portfolios they are generally not diploma bound students.
They're often with us till 22.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Very nice job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It's great seeing you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
guys. Thank you.
Okay, we got a few more items on the agenda tonight. The next one is the first reading of the capital improvement plan. Mr. Mealy, I assume?
I'll jump in, I'm sure, too.
I'm sure you will. Gilly probably will too, actually.
I'm done. I'm dying over here.
Yeah, bring him over here, would you, Mr. Teresi? Thank you. It didn't get to the top of the table, which was a little challenging. I kept saying,
I didn't get to dinner tonight, so.
I kept saying, send him down here, but no one listened to me.
Okay.
They got to Gilly and then he just.
Oh, look at that.
No, I watched.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yet again.
Okay, so VIP notes. What you see here is the annual submission for CIP projects, and what we've done is each year we move the projects up the year and add the fifth year any new projects. So you can see here the elementary classroom, which was part of Facilities Master Plan Phase 1, which is what we're in now. We have this year the money for the design of that, and that's the KBA study that's going on right now. And then the recommendations come out of that. There's right now $1.5 million set aside for that project, and that could change. Also for FY18, which is the one we're submitting now, we have the $850,000, 100 of which we've already received, and we'll be putting out for bid the design of the replacement of the turf fields, similar to what we did with the track. We had the engineer come in, design, do the spec, do the bids, and then it goes out for construction the following year.
And that's the main, right? The main.
The turf fields. Yep. And then the only other item for FY18 is the continuing annual IT infrastructure maintenance, which we had indicated would be $100,000 per year until FY20, when it's going to go up to $200,000, because it should be about 10% of the value of your infrastructure, which is around $2 million. That's why we made that change. Then in year 4, which was last year's year 5, we had introduced the projects for Franklin renovation and the middle school renovation. We have money in there for design, and along the same lines as the current facilities master plan, where the first year is the design of it, and then the next year is the actual construction. So what we're anticipating with those projects are that they would become part of the facilities master plan phase 2. We've been talking to the town manager, and that is his intent as well, and it would take care of most of our school facilities. They would be part of that plan. So you can see we have Franklin, and then I don't know what it would entail, so I put TBD for the amount of construction costs, but it's a placeholder for whatever that might be for both that and the middle school. And also in year 4, which we had introduced last year, district-wide paving. I am meeting with Beta, which is a company that the DPW uses to assess pavement needs, and they've done an assessment of all the schools and pavement needs, so we'll know where that money needs to go. Drainage issues, and working with Steve Foster, we've identified mostly high school. You might notice in the pavement sunken drainage, or things like that, some catch basins that need repair. And the other one is also would be part of facilities master plan phase 2. The other schools, Franklin and the middle school are our most dire needs, but the other schools are in need. We have, besides Franklin, a couple of other elementary schools are more than 50 years old. And surprisingly, it's hard to believe already, but our other 2 are getting close to 20 now already. So they do need some work, and so that would be part of the plan as well. So that's what we have for submittal.
So I will say that I'm not sure the dates are all correct, and I think that there's probably going to be some push to move probably the middle school up a few years if we can do that. I think the key here is, and we've worked with the town manager and Ray to get to this, is to put these in as placeholders and to really get a better sense from some folks, the architects, et cetera, like what are the numbers, what are the reality, but I think it's fair to say that everyone in town is becoming more and more aware about the dire needs of our school facilities and the need to address them. So I think step 1 is what we're going to be working on in about 3 weeks, which is additional elementary classroom space. I think that number 1.5 is not going to be the number we're going to ultimately be settling on. And then I think also is really kind of getting the community to understand that we are overcrowded at our middle school. Franklin needs some significant renovations, not duct tape and bubble gum, but needs some significant renovations, and that we need to be taking care of our other assets. So in my opinion, this is a process, and I think that the good thing is in the town of North Andover, we have seen the value of that process working on the town side as the town buildings are close to done and look quite wonderful, and now we need to do the same on the school side.
So when do we have to submit this by?
We have to submit this, they're not so strict on it.
No, the draft, it just has to be entered into the system, and that's been done, but we can change it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, does it behoove us just to hold off on this, because obviously FY18,
No.
we can change the number later?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and the facilities master plan number is very different. That's
Oh, yeah.
the big money is this one, is in the facilities master plan. So there's been a lot of movement. I think everyone is understanding that number 1.5 is already in the facilities master plan. It was
Right.
approved many years ago. And we purposely didn't put a number at Franklin in the middle school and worked with Andrew Mailer on that. It felt better to just say TBD than to try to undershoot it, overshoot it. It just didn't make any
So
sense.
this is just the planning.
Yeah.
Right, but since this is the first reading of this anyways, by the 17th, we're not going to have a more definitive number at all?
No, we won't, we'll in December.
All right.
But I will say, I think the key here is the communication. They are absolutely anticipating that number being different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, any other questions on it? It's just a first reading, so we can...
So when does our debt from the high school
Come off the books?
Our debt from the high school comes out off in FY19. So I think it's really important. I spent a lot of time this morning looking at these numbers. The debt, the debt for the high school comes off in 2020. But I will say that the debt for the town, the debt exclusion for the town drops $1.3 million in FY19.
Okay.
What else is coming up in 19?
I don't know.
I think the
I
Kittredge
know
Board
the
of
number, but I don't know.
So it drops from about 1.8 to about from 1.9 to about 400,000 in next year's FY19.
I thought it was Thompson.
I think it's Thompson. That would be about 20 years.
But
so-
we still have
so
the
they
high
finance
school.
it.
We're still carrying the high school for a little bit longer at about
Okay.
$400,000. But there is a significant reduction in debt exclusion in FY19.
Yes,
Okay.
there is.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
you could, sure.
So this $850,000 for the turf field, that's the field inside the track and the field, the football field, or just the football field?
Turf
Both.
field.
And does that include maintenance until the next refurbishment? Like, how do we maintain these
This is
things?
a replacement of.
Just replacement.
And we've actually done pretty well. The life expectancy, when it was put in, was around 8 years, and that was 2004.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
We've done very well.
Yeah.
Right.
And do we have, like, fields maintenance master plans? Or, like, I know we, like, is the Drummond softball diamond under the lights our responsibility?
No.
Okay. And neither is McAvoy, that's,
No,
okay.
that's
And well, and also that having sat through a bunch of excellent soccer games this fall, there's the excellent football turf, and then you've got the field next to it where the JV plays, and it's pretty heinous. So, is there any way to, during this, do something to maybe grow the grass better or keep the? No. Okay.
The baseball field is tough at the high school. And I do know that one of the things they've talked about, although it's got a long way to go, is the possibility of a turf baseball field at the middle school open space area.
Project,
Yeah,
Should be
which,
updating us on, so.
Right.
yeah, which if that did happen, you'd bet that the high school would want
Be
to
in
play
the-
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there just a design problem with that, with the baseball field?
Yeah, I mean, there's no irrigation.
That's
Well, it's
kind
also
of what I was
built on
getting
the
at. There's no irrigation.
It's built on the former parking
Yeah.
lot, and there's a swampland all
Right.
around
Yeah.
it. And it's looked good over years
Yeah,
with
it's hard
tons
as a
of
rock.
care.
Yeah.
But the geese are at it, the birds
Oh
are
my
at
gosh,
it,
yeah.
and the water level gets wet.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that, or we can? Thanks for that. Okay. Next one is first reading the Mass Green Communities Grant Program Energy Reduction Plan, and we're going to be asked to suspend the rules as well, so we could pass this tonight. Who's going to take this one?
This comes from the town. This is- I don't mean to punt, but if you remember, we started
Right.
an adoption of a green communities program
Right.
with our specific cars. This is just the next phase, and I know about as much as you do about it.
One thing we add to that, basically, we're already there as far as what our commitment is. We got 16%. The commitment in this is to get to 20% reduction, and the ESCO project got a 16%, and the current switch that the town is doing for the LED bulbs will be 4%, so we'll have met the 20%, so there won't be a problem in getting there.
That 60% is quantified, or is that still?
Yes, no, that's already quantified.
Why is it that we have to approve it? Is it just because?
There's a deadline of
No, I meant because of
Something
changes within
in
the schools.
statute.
Statute.
Yeah, the statute says that we have to do it as well, because it's our building.
So the Board of Selectmen voted it, I think, at their last meeting and have
Tuesday.
asked us to do the same.
I don't think they necessarily have the first reading rule. I don't know. I know. My memory's shot. So could I have a motion to suspend the rules to take this up and try to pass it today first?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Limpet to suspend the rules, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So we're going to no, okay. 4-1. Mr. Gross voting no on suspension of the rules. Sure, you can say.
No, I just want to be clear. I mean, this is a very large document with a lot of unclear and draft statements. So are we approving a draft document?
We are approving this energy reduction plan that, according to Mr. Mealy, according to my recollection, is we've done most of this stuff already anyways.
I don't disagree, but
I think it may be.
From a procedural perspective, I'm being asked to vote on a document
Sure.
marked as draft that I'm seeing for the first time.
We did provide it.
Yeah, yes, and I saw it on my telephone.
Yep.
So that's the
That's
reason
fine.
why I do not want to suspend the rules, but let's
That's
continue.
fine, absolutely fine. Okay, so now that we've suspended the rules, could I have a motion to approve the energy reduction plan as presented in its packet?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Limpert. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Gross. All those in favor say aye.
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 I will abstain.
Abstain.
I'll vote no.
Vote no.
I'll abstain as well.
We have a problem.
That's a problem.
We have a problem.
That's not a majority.
Two abstentions.
Well, no, it's present, it's two abstentions, it's president voting, so you get two
Yep.
abstentions, 2-1-2, that's the majority vote.
Yep.
2-1-2.
2-1-2 is a majority vote. Correct? Two abstentions?
Yep.
And we 1 no? Is that correct?
Yep.
That's only me.
It's president and voting, so abstentions mean you're not
I
voting.
left my Robert's Rule of Order at home, but that's fine, that's fine. If it's a procedural issue, we can rectify it next meeting.
So just for the record again, Mr. Lippert, Mr. Tracy voting yes, Mr. McDevitt
I'm voting no.
voting no,
And I'm abstaining.
abstaining, and I'm abstaining. So it's 2-1-2, the chair rules that it's been adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along.
Sorry we did not have more information.
That's
but
fine.
This is what happens, right?
No,
Yeah.
don't want to muddy the
We
word.
presented a draft list of the dates to meet January to June. I don't expect to adopt these right now, but if anyone knows right now they don't work, I mean, throw those out. Otherwise, look at your calendars over the next 2 weeks, and but this is the draft for January to June. This is how we're shaking out right now. So, does anybody have anything they can tell us now, or do you want to just email it stuff?
I'll just email it if that's okay.
I was fine with these dates.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's one, but I've just got to check on some
Okay.
conference dates, so.
If you could
Send them to you? Or
send them to me.
Mr. Garrett?
Send them to me is fine.
Okay.
All right, and we'll go from there. Lastly, public comment. They were people there.
They were crickets.
They were people there. Anything from the board?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Good? Ms. Mabley?
I have your invitation, which is already mentioned, to the Veterans Day event next Thursday at the Thompson School. It's a fan favorite. And one other quick thing, with the PTO presidents, they have met and are interested in the Bay State Textiles Group, which is a group where what they want to do is put boxes on each of the school properties to then collect textiles, and they understand that the town is going to be rolling out their own town program. But any textiles put in the bins, we're talking stuffed animal sheets, the whole business, it gets weighed on a regular basis, and the PTOs would get 70% payout, whatever, I can't remember the exact dollar amount, to the PTOs for whatever this textile company collects. Their question that they asked me to ask us is, they need our permission to put these boxes on school property, or do they just work with the school principals and the custodians at each building to do this?
I would think that if they're going to put it on our property, they would need our permission, but people should also realize the town is entering into.
They do, they
They
discuss
don't-
that, but they want to
Okay.
still do it because they think that parents, to support the school, would dump it in the bin rather
Sure.
than by the side of the road, and some people said they don't want
Sure.
their linens on the curb. So the question, they would need to then seek permission to do that.
I would think so.
Okay.
Any other second opinion on that? But I think that if we.
I couldn't really find policy, but I figured,
We actually have had this discussion before.
Okay.
With the principals, and the main concern expressed is that they become collection sites for a lot of things.
right,
And that's why you might not get the cooperation to have them
right.
on site.
So the group
I
should
think
come
that-
here.
I
to
would think that if
discuss
they
it.
want, they should put a proposal together.
Okay.
And submit it to us, and obviously we'd get feedback from the administration and the
Right.
principals, and, I would think so too, because those textile, you see those bins, I mean.
I
there's
live right by
tra-
St. Mike's, and I do see those bins,
Well,
yeah.
they're everywhere, they put trash in them, they put everything in them, so we can discuss it, no question
Yeah,
about it.
okay, so but they would put a proposal, and, because the other question was, since it's on school property and the checks would be cut directly to the PTO, is that okay, or would it have to, again, so they had some hairy questions, and so I'll have them make a proposal.
I'd look at liability as well.
Thank you.
Well, and I guess the other question for Mr. Mealy's input is, would the principals have some sort of like local option to
Right.
accept or not the program at their school if they thought it was going to be a problem for their school? So that might be something else we could think about.
This would be inside the building.
No, outside.
Outside the building.
Okay.
It's like, think a Goodwill box, but it's
Yep.
much smaller, and they pick it up on a weekly, they empty it on a weekly basis, is what the company proposed. I think it was weekly.
Like St. Mike's has a couple of football.
They have, they have St. Vincent de Paul. Right, but these are much smaller than those, and theoretically weekly, which sounded a little disruptive to me, but I don't know what time of day they do it.
I would recommend also in their proposal that they should, if they're going to come here, they should probably bring the group that's going to do it, the company
Okay.
that's going to do it.
She came to the meeting then,
Okay,
and
good.
we didn't see that part. Okay. I will let them know, thank you.
Mr. Leopard, anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Just election days on Tuesday. I hope things run smoothly at the high school. It sounds like we've done a lot of early voting in this town. 6,000, 7,000 people going to vote.
So much for that opportunity for our clerk. Joyce, I don't want to-
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, she's done a great job with this.
She's ready for it to be over.
Yeah, considering that, considering that town hall opened the same day that they started early voting, so. Anyways, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Mr. Gross, second by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank
We're
you.
adjourned.